from where this afternoon the whole country pays attention to government's town hall meeting on the subject of the E-Levy is one that has engaged national attention and national conversation for a while now. And in the few days gone by and in the days ahead of us, we'll have an opportunity to have extensive conversations on the E-Levy, what it means, and what it will do for the Republic. We're live on a number of television stations that I'll be acknowledging shortly. May I please ask you to rise wherever you are so that we take an opening prayer and get this afternoon's engagement underway. Bishop Samuel Yawedu will give us the opening prayer.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you. We bless your holy name for what you are doing in our nation. We thank you for what you are about to do. As we're going to discuss about the E-Levy, we pray that we're going to get good results, a results that will be beneficial to all the nation. Anoint your people that will give them wisdom to speak. Bless everybody here and let it affect even their nation. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Later when we are done, the Reverend Dr. Kofi Amfo Akono, Koforidua District Minister, Presbyterian Church of Ghana, will say a closing prayer for us. And you know, and there we are share our Ascension Hall, Koforidua Waha. Assembly tia. Ghana nyinara eni ewa ha ene ewie and common ne say E-Levy aban hyehyɛ sɛ ye nyinaa ye befiase na yetua ne nkakra nkra ahwede aye ye ho adwuma wo man mu ha no ɛho adwentoato a enti na ye hyia ewa ha yi ene ewie mpanimfo akukudam aba bɛka yensa a ombɛboa ye man ate E-Levy nkɔmmɔ no ase na yeso ya dwenkyerɛ ne yasem bisa ye pese ye de to omanim no ye de ato omanim enche bia meto mebo a kyerɛkyerɛ mu radio ne TV ahodo agana nyinara omani edi achi a omo ema ganafo ehu yen ganafo ate asem mesan so a kyerɛ mpanimfo a wa ha nyinaa na ansana ye bedi nkɔmmɔ no me pese me frɛ the honorable regional minister the honorable Seth Champon ma oma ye nyinaa kwa mama en fa nsɛmbɔ kɛse enhyia no honorable regional minister to give us the welcome address.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Eminent clergy, the Honorable Minister responsible for finance, the Honorable Ken Oforiatta, the Honorable Minister for communications and digitalization, the Honorable Esla Owusu Ekuful, and Member of Parliament for Ablekuma West, the Honorable Minister for Information, the Honorable Kojo Opoin Nkrumah, and Member of Parliament for Ofuase Ayirebi, the Honorable Deputy Majority Leader, the Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Marking, and Member of Parliament for Efutu, the Honorable Deputy Minister responsible for Communications, the Honorable Ama Omar, and Member of Parliament for Jabin constituency, the Honorable Member of Parliament for New Jabin South and Deputy Minister for the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Honorable Michael Ochibefi, the Honorable Nana Kwesi Ejei Boating, Member of Parliament for New Jabin North, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Achimswedro, the Honorable Ken Osei-Nyako, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Oda, the Honorable Alexander Akwesi Aqua. There are too many MPs here, I'm getting loose. I want to welcome our members of academia who are here with us. I welcome our distinguished professionals who have all been extended a hand of invitation for this important meeting for on behalf of government, as has been eloquently described by my good brother, the Minister of Information. My business is just to ensure that this meeting happening in the regional capital of the Eastern region, the pride of Ghana, happens without any shred of accident. And it ends peacefully, and we take this beautiful policy of government progressively. From behalf of the chiefs and people of the Eastern region, I humbly welcome each and every person within this hall to this beautiful meeting. And asofo ene akyerɛkyerɛfoɔ ne amanyɔ mpanimfoɔ a wo a mebɔ wo din a woama ma wo din fa kyɛ me. Deɛ wɔ mu ne sɛ ɛnnɛ dwumadie ɛyɛ dwumadie a yɛde boa aban ani so adehunu ne aban nhyehyɛeɛ. Me nua onimonyamfoɔ Kwadwo Ɔpɔn Nkrumah ɛdi kan ato din ama yɛn nyinaa yɛhunu. Masɛdeɛ ne sɛ megyina apue mantam ahempɔn ɛne ɔnemanfoɔ anan mu na mama yɛn nyinaa akɔ aba ɛwɔ kuropɔn Koforidua mu. Dwumadie no ahyɛaseɛ nie, mema yɛn nyinaa akɔ aba. Nyame nhyira yɛn na ɔma dwumadie no nkɔ awieyɛ pɛpɛɛpɛ ma yɛn.
Honorable Minister, yeah, there was some Honorable Regional Minister, the Honorable Seth Echampong. Penifo e share I say, Mami break akra na min yim penifo kakra bi e waha edi enkyere mu nyinaa na yemfi yen komo no. Edin kan the Deputy Majority Leader. And over Parliament dom kese e wo Parliament. Opani a odi anim na bedi e the Honorable Alexander Afenyoma ke mmemfa nsembo kese enhia no. Oka mpenimfo miensa ene ye be kasa ene awie yi ho ono aso no member of Parliament for Efutu. The Honorable Minister for Communications, the Honorable Esla Owusu Ekofo, the Minister responsible for Finance, the Honorable Ken Ofuriata, Member of Parliament for Achimswedru, Honorable Ken Osei Nyakon Ewase, the Honorable Kwesi Eje Boating MP, New Jabe North, Yemfa Nsemkese, Nsembokese Inshiano. The Honorable Michael Tribefi, Member of Parliament, New Jabe South, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. The Member of Parliament for Jabin, the Honorable Amapoma, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Member of Parliament Akim Odan, the Honorable Akwesi Akwa, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Member of Parliament Achiaso, the Honorable Kofi Mafo, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Kofi Wayne? Kofi Wayne, I say Chairman. The Honorable Kofi Ochre Ejekum, your friend Arafat, Honorable Member for Fantiakwa South, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. A number of MMDCs, the Honorable Kwabena Penning, Nkansa, Etiwa East, Honorable Mayehu na Yemonsem Honorable Simon Kweku Tete, Lower Manya Krobo, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Honorable Akosia Sabia Ano, Ebuakwa South, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. The Honorable Seth Brickrine Denchembo, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. The Honorable Joe Sam Upper Menya Krobo, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Honorable Margaret Darkon, Suhum Municipal, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Honorable Richmond Amponsa, Achiase District, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Honorable Victoria Edu, Brim Central, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Honorable Isaac Apel Jesse, New Jaben South, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. Now, if Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano, Honorable Paul Asamoah of Francia Yerebi, and Achimansa District, Yemfa Nsembokese Inshiano. We koko football kakrebi na mebono. Honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of questions about government's proposed electronic levy. I will have an opportunity to invite shortly some of our speakers to have an opportunity to speak to these questions and provide answers. With us this afternoon as well is the Minister for Roads, the Honorable Amwakwata. Let's acknowledge him with a round of applause. The Honorable Deputy Minister for Information, the Honorable Fatimatu Abubakar. Let's acknowledge her with a big round of applause as well. I'll introduce more of the dignitaries who are here with us. I am informed that members of the clergy, Asofo Ewa Hase Bebe, Asofo Mpamcho Muntumunsa, Emma Yehu Bebi Amo Edamwase. Traditional council representatives are here. Market women representatives are here. Transport union reps who are here. Give us a big wave wherever you are, Transport union. Momo agents are here. National service persons are here. Members of NAT, TEU, TUTAG, hoteliers, beauticians, dressmakers, CTAG, NAGRAT, health workers, students, and other members of the cross-section of the Ghanaian society are here with us today. Kosa bebre na nipa bebre bisa fa E-Levy no ho. E-Levy na eda ade. Eden na be yamae. Eto a yetua wo Ghana no so eso adwuma a yesre aban se aban enyema na. No krese E-Levy no se aban eje a momo adwuma nyina begu. Wonoma epese e transfer sika ewo platforms ahodo so nyina bejae ana. Amanoni a epese yeko bisi South Africa, bisi English abrochi, bisi America. Eho ne to ahina omutua. Empen bi krampa besen kwa na yese se aban the talk time tax bar obi abejae kasa ewo ne telephone so. Sa asem no na bakosem sen nete. Ena wie ye hia wa he ye nkomo ne ebedi no afanu brofo kakra na ye de aba akan kasa so kakra. Ewie radio ni TV ahodo bebre. Hwɛ yɛn etie yɛn enche bia mebobodin na enche bia mefrɛ minister responsible for communication and digitization no abefi yɛn komodie no ase obema yehu abefo intentan adwumadie no kwan a ɔmofa so edidi dwa no emu abakɔsɛm sɛn nete emre bia bɛsen kwa yɛ ka sɛ yɛbɛ talk time tax a ampaniampa ebi mu sorry a sɛ talk time tax yɛ de ba obi ankasa o telephone so biom telephone so nkomo ne ade nyina begu ye nye sika bi amfiri mu sa amfidi dwuma ne ade nyina begu no na bakosem etesen enne aman ahodo ahena momo ana transaction levies we wo mu AGB sika sen na de bre o maban ede mpuntu dwuma na o maban ede ye enema we ebi ena ne odikan on e be kasa minister for digitization and communication ede betu enim tse mo e krado a Moma yemfansem bonhia the honorable Esla Owusu Ekofo. Ne nkomo no obedi no brofo kakra ene akan kasa kakra. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Minister for Finance, the Honorable Minister for Information, the Deputy Majority Leader in Parliament, the Honorable Minister for Roads and Highways, our host, the Honorable Regional Minister, MPs of the region here present, MMDCs of the region here present, the clergy who've graciously granted us the use of this hall for this program, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a good afternoon. I'll start in English and then try to translate it into Twi as I await the questions that will come from the floor. Over the past 18 months, it's become clear that if the African continent is to be globally competitive, it must embrace the common vision of creating an integrated and inclusive digital society that improves the quality of life of citizens, strengthens the development of the private sector, and advances Africa's quest to attain the Sustainable Development Goals. COVID-19, like every cloud, has a silver lining, and it accelerated the digitalization of Africa and helped us to see how pivotal digital platforms, applications, and services are. According to the UN Economic Commission for Africa, 61% of a sample of firms surveyed on the continent reported an increase in online sales since the start of the pandemic, while more than 60% of micro, small, and medium enterprises identified online selling as a top new opportunity in response to the crisis. As we were locked down, trading moved from shops to online and digital platforms. Globally, the digital economy is projected to grow from $11.5 trillion in 2016 to over $23 trillion by 2025. We cannot be spectators and observe events. We have to be part of the networked world of today. And as a government, we are focusing on improving access, reducing costs, and improving the speed of internet access, while also leveraging on digital platforms to augment fiscal policy and better shape the delivery of public services. We need to understand the nature of transactions being undertaken on digital platforms. And I'll try and give a small snapshot of this. A survey was recently conducted on transactions undertaken on digital platforms. And some of the results confirm that in Ghana, digital platforms have become the main tool in recent times for payment for goods and services, as well as for transfers and remittances locally and in some cases abroad. The survey also showed that digital transactions have surpassed cash and checks as the preferred medium for transacting business. Data from the Bank of Ghana and other sources have also confirmed the growing trend in e-commerce and other online sales and activities. Between February 2020 and February 2021 alone, Ghana witnessed an increase of over 120% in the value of digital transactions compared to 44% for the same period between February 2019 and February 2020. Online selling offers convenience. It's easy to transact, it's secure, it is visible, and the surge, we believe, was primarily due to the increase in the use of digital platforms caused by COVID-19 at the beginning of 2020. We've all realized that without digital infrastructure, it's almost impossible to live in today's world. Try leaving your phone behind at home and going to work and see if you can function properly during the day. It's no longer a luxury. It's become an indispensable tool for transacting any kind of business. And it's not just for entertainment, but it is a working tool. It is your bank in your pocket. It is your office in your pocket. It is your source of correspondence, amongst other things. In 2020, the total value of transactions was estimated to be over 500 billion, compared to 257 billion in 2019, and only 78 billion in 2016. just 5 years ago. Today, as we speak, and we have the data for mobile money transactions from 1st to 24th January, 333 million plus mobile money transactions have been conducted just this year alone, from 1st to 24th January. Worth and the value of over 75 billion cedis has been transacted just for this period, and the month has not even ended. I don't have the comparable figures for the banks, but I dare say bank transactions will be just about a third of what we're witnessing on mobile money platforms. The Finance Ministry tells us, and he's here, he'll give us more detail on that, that our tax to GDP ratio stands at 12.2%, which is one of the lowest in sub-Saharan Africa. The average for the region is 16.5%. In practical terms, 8% of the population are paying for the developmental needs of the entire country and carrying the tax burden of 30.8 million people. That's not sustainable. And I dare say it is unfair to mainly public sector workers and those who are registered with the GRA as taxpayers, while the rest of us, both in the formal and informal sector, find ingenious ways of evading our civic responsibility to pay taxes. We're talking about a Ghana beyond aid. We need to be able to finance our own development and stop the dependence on either loans or grants or aid from other countries if we are to be truly independent. In 2008, the government of President Kufuor introduced the communication service tax in August of that year, and it became another source of income for national development. That tax was introduced at the rate of 6%, which was later increased to 9%. E-Levy is being introduced at the lowest rate for any tax in Ghana, comparatively at 1.75%, less than 2%. In other countries, digital taxes are being introduced at the rate of up to 10%, and they are paying. That's the UK, and we go there and seek loans from them to finance our development, when we are not paying the requisite taxes that we should. In 2020, the Communication Service Tax Amendment Act was passed to reduce the rate from 9% to 5% from the 15th of September 2020. When the CST was introduced, it faced similar opposition as we are seeing currently. And the current speaker dubbed it as talk tax, as the NDC and the industry, led by the GSMA data, claimed it would damage the growth of the telecommunications industry as consumers would change their mobile communication habits. This does not happen. They were unfounded fears. Incidentally, at the time, I was the spokesperson for the mobile telecommunications network operators. And I remember vehemently opposing the communication service tax based on data from the GSMA, which is an industry association, the GSM Association internationally. They had produced data to the effect that introduction of any such tax would kill the industry, stifle its growth. And so based on that analysis, we all went out and opposed the introduction of that tax. Several years on, we realized that Those dangers were unfounded. It never happened. The industry has grown exponentially since 2008, and all of us find telecommunications and digital infrastructure applications and services as indispensable to everything that we seek to do. The same speculations and complaints are being made about the E-Levy, that consumers will stop using electronic transactions because of the imposition of this levy. I dare say that based on our experience with the communication service tax and lessons from other African countries, we're confident that the E-Levy will not bring about any negative changes in consumer behavior, as electronic transactions afford us the convenience, the safety, the security that we currently enjoy. Despite the NDC's opposition to the communication service tax, they never repealed it when they were in power. They didn't even reduce the rate of the levy. They also complained about and rejected the National Health Insurance Scheme when it was introduced in Parliament and actually walked out. They complained about the capitation grant and sought to rubbish it. They had issues with free SHS and even asked for a boycott of the national ID and ridiculed our oil discovery as well, claiming that it was adringo and not crude oil. They always oppose every initiative that will ultimately benefit the Ghanaian people. But our collective experience shows, and they themselves admit, that despite their initial opposition to many of these interventions, they've proven to be worth their weight in gold. I dare say, and I appeal to them, to cooperate with government and work with us to pass this levy as well, because ultimately, the results that we got from the communication service tax, which clearly did not destroy the industry, will also be evident post-implementation of this levy, as we are all working collectively to enhance access to and use of digital platforms, working with the Ministry of Finance to ensure that digital financial services becomes the norm rather than the exception, as we strive to create a cash-light society and reduce our reliance on cash for our transactions. This year, working with the ministry and the developers of the Ghana.gov platform, we intend to move applications and payment for all government goods and services onto the Ghana.gov platform. If any of you has applied for a passport recently, you would vouch for the fact that it's made it easy, simple, corruption-free, harassment-free. The Goro boys are screaming because they're being deprived of their livelihood, because now you don't need to know anybody to acquire a passport. Just go onto the Ghana.gov platform, submit your application, pay for it, and you'll be sent notification of when to come and collect your passport. And when you go, your passport is ready for collection. You don't have to pay a bribe to anyone. We're going to do the same for all government goods and services using that platform to ease government to citizen interactions and make it easier for us to conduct business in this country. It is not a story I'm telling you. It is a fact which is happening. If you apply to register a company now, you would see that, and I used this example yesterday, the minute you register your company, notification is sent to your district assembly where that business is located. They also send you notification instantly about the amount of business operating license that you have to pay. You pay for it electronically. You get a receipt electronically. You're ready and you're set to commence business without having to pay bribe, join any queue, or suffer any harassment. That's the kind of digital infrastructure that we're putting in place, which will facilitate the use of digital forms of payment and will not collapse the industry. So I can say confidently to the Momo operators that we're working to grow your business and not to destroy it. A GSMA report also showed that when the levy, a similar levy was passed in Uganda, transaction values reduced slightly upon the introduction of this levy, but they picked up almost immediately, and after 4 months, we're back at the levels before the introduction of the tax, and currently have far outstripped those levels. I'm confident that it won't take even 4 months for the industry in Ghana here to absorb this levy and grow even more, as was the case with the communication service tax. We're unique, we're blessed, we're a nation after the heart, God's own heart. And so we've learned lessons from the experiences of other countries that have introduced digital taxes in this continent. And that is why the Minister for Finance has put a cap, a safety cap, whereby transactions up to 100 cedis are exempted from the levy to ensure that those who send these sums are not severely impacted. And 40% of all Momo transactions fall in this category. So almost half of all the transactions are exempted. Just a few statistics about how much we spent on e-commerce in by January 2021. We spent 234 million on travel, mobility, and accommodation. This was even down by 34% due to COVID restrictions on travel. We spent over 144 million on fashion and beauty on electronic platforms. This is in Ghana here. All these transactions happened electronically and went largely untaxed. Business has moved from physical locations online, outside the reach of the GRA, and depriving government of much needed revenue. We need to reverse that, and the E-Levy will do that. It will enable government to build a proper digital infrastructure and create a digital marketplace which will connect buyers and sellers and help people access value-added services such as e-health, e-agric, e-education, etc. It will provide funding for cybersecurity to protect us from cyber fraudsters and criminals as we engage more on digital platforms. We all want connectivity, and a robust digital infrastructure will drive down the cost of using telecommunication services and improve access to digital services. We're rolling out the rural telephony project. It will also give all of us a chance to contribute to our own development and our economy, our economic and infrastructural development. It will reduce corruption, theft, and other forms of embezzlement because it is inherently traceable and people can't hide and commit fraud or crimes behind it. If you use a credit or a debit card, you pay between 2 to 4% transaction fees. And so the levy is on the lower end of total cost. All bank transfers also attract bank charges. So it is not true that this is going to affect or be double taxation or tax our capital as well. But I leave that for the finance minister to talk more about. The roads minister is here. We'll get funding for road construction and maintenance and more reliable payments for existing contracts to reduce the overall burden on government. Such infrastructural development will also create more jobs for the youth and cut down on youth unemployment, as Youth Start initiative would also do. more financial inclusion and digital empowerment for the less privileged in our society would also ensue. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals are there for government to achieve, including reducing inequality, gender equality, education, clean water, and sanitation. We need to find a way of increasing domestic revenue mobilization, which is key to achieving these goals. If the funds are not generated internally, we would either have to go and beg for aid, borrow. We can't steal. So we would either have to beg or borrow. And we cannot continue to borrow to finance or beg to finance our development. Government is seeking to meet its agenda of a Ghana beyond aid. And this requires all of us to support the E-Levy and contribute our quota to national development. The world is changing, and we must depend more on our own internally generated funds for our development. He who pays the piper calls the tune. So long as we are dependent on donors, they will dictate the pace of our development. And so we need to rely less on donors to be truly independent. Our destiny really lies in our own hands. Semwa Niamikaye ne tofabo muane se aban eye nhyehyey a ebema ye de abefo mfidie ene ntahudie yahyemu ekna ne nyina eye sikasam na se yampe yankasa yenya sika ewo yankasa yenho entua for yempuntuo na yenyina yehwehwe na just yekobobosia ana yekosre na okosre ade a oni na okosre wono ho no ono na ekire wo se da ha yesei nti na yemfa ahodie a yenya as oman no a ankrankre amanone for na wo se omo efso yasene na yeye yempuntu nyuma no na ene na yemfa ahodie no na yedi ne sen efise yensa ehye wanum emri bi atwam yekọ IMF omo ka kire yense mayema mabu yemfa mabu adwumamu ewo aban adwumakuom. There was a freeze on employment enti na yemma etifie a yenya adwuma enye efise omo ma yensika no ena ehye yenkete se mayemfa yemma ewo adwumamu yensusu de enim se yendaache impuntu agina entiti a yede bema yemma no ene enti e wose yemma won entiti a bema omotumi aye abefo nkitahudie no omosusu de won ho ebeji mu bi ni nyina eyiska wo hwe yensika sem se ni nsitie na se yankasa yansomu kakra we aso ha we asora ni entwa ne kakra yempuntuo no ebeka akire emri bi a yede talk tax eba no eye afi 2008 no yeti hoye send yeti ni sesie se yede talk tax ne ba ebem ye nyina ye jai kasa ewo telephone so ebegu adwuma no internet adwuma no enkoso ebio Ewrade adom mampanin kufu aban etumi edebaaye time ayede ba no na me ye adwuma ewo me ne kasamafo emma network telecoms service operators no enti ye ne aban esi ye ni bia ekan bia se yede ba no ebe ha adwuma no na nimdeɛ kakra ɔmo de ama yɛn free GSM Association na kyerɛ sɛ ɛbɛha yɛ adwuma no nanso abakɔsɛm yɛn nyinaa yɛyɛ living witnesses yɛdi mu adanseɛ sɛ yɛde talk tax baayɛ no adwuma yi ɛngu ɛtu mpɔn ma nnɛ obiara dwumadie bi a woyɛ biara no wonni internet access wonni data wonni phone a dwumadie no a woyɛ no ne yɛ no ɛyɛ den ɛma yɛn nyinaa kakra enti nea yɛtee sɛ ɛbɛgu adwuma no ɛnyɛ saa ɛna ɛsiiɛ mewɔ awerɛhyɛmu sɛ saa akuo yi ara ne mpanimfoɔ bi nso so asɔre ɛkasa tia E-Levy yi sɛnea ɛsii with talk tax to mewɔ awerɛhyɛmu sɛ yɛde E-Levy no nso so ba a ɛngu adwuma biara mmom aban koraa ɛnnɛ ɛyɛ nhyehyɛeɛ a ɛbɛma amanfoɔ dodoɔ na ɛyi so abɛɛfo kwan so ɛde nkitaho sɛ ɛyɛ dwadie sɛ ɛyɛ adesua sɛ ɛyɛ apɔmuden mpo sɛ ɛyɛ kuayɔ yɛhyɛ ne nyinaa kena emu kena na yɛafa abɛɛfo kwan so na yɛde ayɛ dwadie titiriw yɛmpɛ sɛ yɛde sika ɛbɛdi dwa yɛpɛ sɛ obiara use digital financial services yi bi either mobile money ana credit card ana debit card ana QR code abɛɛfo nhyehyɛeɛ no yɛayɛ ne bebree a yɛpɛ sɛ ankorankora nyinaa ɛyusu abɛɛfo kwan so ɛdidi wɔn dwa nti yɛn nuanom wɔ mu suro so ɔmo adwuma bɛgu no me a meda saa asoɛyɛ yi ano mehyɛ mo bɔ sɛ nhyehyɛeɛ a yɛde agu akwan mu no afei koraa na ɛbɛma adwuma no atu mpɔn na akɔ nkan na yɛatrem na yɛbrɛ yɛsusu sika a cash a yɛyusu no bebree no yɛpɛ sɛ yɛte so na yɛfa abɛɛfo kwan so mo ɛdidi yɛn dwa ɛne ɛbɔ yɛn bra enti nhyehyɛeɛ no a yɛyɛ no bɛtrɛ mu mmom ɛmmɛ nsɛe ɛbɛhyɛ mu ɛkena baabi ɔmode saa adwumakuo yi bi ɛtoɔ yi bi baayɛ no nso yɛhu ɔhaw kakra a ɛba wɔn hɔ no enti yɛn yɛde aba yɛn nhyehyɛeɛ no mu a yɛayɛ nhyehyɛeɛ a ɛbɛyi saa haw no dodoɔ na ɛfiri hɔ enti ma yɛn koma ɛntu sɛ levy yi yɛde ba a ɛbɛba aba abɛ ha yɛn daabi yɛhwɛ sika a yɛdi yɛyusu ɛno koraa dollar nyɛ cedi ɛwɔ abɛɛfo ntentan dwadie a yɛdi January afe a ɛtwa mu yi 2021 ne mu a $234 million ɛna yɛdi ɛwɔ e-commerce abɛɛfo adwadie mu ɛwɔ ɛkwantuo kaafa ɛne accommodation for I can't say emu aha 234 million ɛno mpo no na ɛso ate ɔha nkyekyɛmu aduasa ɛnan ɛsan COVID restrictions na ɛbaeɛ ne nti ti yɛate so 34% ne mpo no ɛna na ɛyɛ 234 million ɛfa ɛma ntarehyɛ ne makeup mu ne saa nneɛma na yɛdi mu dwa Ghana nko a $144 million on fashion and beauty alone. Enti si yɛyɛ saa nhyehyɛeɛ yi a ɔmo di saa adwa yi nyinaa ɛwɔ abɛɛfo mfidie so yi ɔmo ntua ɛho ɛto biara nanso yɛ mmara no ɛkyerɛ sɛ wodi dwa ɛwɔ man mu ha na wonya mfasoɔ bi ɛwɔ ha ɛwɔ sɛ wotua ho ɛto ɛmfa ho sɛ wabie store anaa wohyɛ wo dan mu wodi and ɛdi saa adwa no abɛɛfo kwan so ti adwuma no move afiri store dan mu akɔ digital platform so abɛɛfo okay abɛɛfo ntentan nhyehyɛeɛ ɛso ɛhɔ no GRA ntumi nyegye yɛn ɛtoɔ no a ɛwɔ sɛ ɔmo gyeɛ no nti asɛ nipa kakraa bi ɔha nkyekyɛmu nwɔtwe epe enetua to ewo memu ha a yedidi yempuntuduma enyina omukomu ebu yenyinara yebetumi atua nkakra edi asomwasene si yesi yepe Ghana beyond 8 Ghana ojina ne nanso afa ntuma pefra a ono ankasa abo ne brade a yesi waso aware a no ato preti sisi a yesi yen yede yen ho tinya afe ne yekọ akone ne na mama no ne akosre ansa ne yedidi anaya yeka akwan anaya si school dan anaya si ayasabia e wo se yankasa yetumi sane yen fotom na yen nyina ankrankre etua nkakra na ye toatoa ne nyina eka ne nyina bo ano na yetumi editua yempuntuo no ehoka yemma benya adwuma aye abefo nhyehyɛ no yebetrem ɛho bambɔ no yebenya sika ni bi yede aye ka kwan yebenya bi ede aye agenda 111 hospitals a yepesi yesie no yebenya bi ede aye ti yebesre Ghana fo nyina enkanka yenuanom dom kumafo ne se omo emeka yeho na ehu na aba wo mu se eye adeboni bi a eba ebe ha yen no omunyi sa ehu no emfiri yemu na mom ye nyina yemfa yan hoɔden ne yani ani akyiri na yɛnhwɛ sɛ sika na yɛ gyegye toɔ na yɛ gyegye no ne yɛka sɛ yɛde bɛyɛ no ampaniampa yɛde edi sɛ adwuma no yɛyɛ saa aban so bɛtena se sika bi enyu enko obiya botom ketasehye ne proye ebebrase efise uye adwuma abefo nhyehyɛ mu a ani edam eda ho fan obiya ni tuam udisi a enye yie yenyina ye mmoa na yenya san nhyehyɛ no na ye mmoa na ye man emfa de ntoma pa emfra da mu nyina
Mantemun ceremony, you may fancy mock a seer and honorable Minister for Communications and Digitalization. I say, Wachere Yabako Sam Kakra Ewa Bra in Fidie ne Abefum Fidie Kwanso a hoto. Sika ehwe omni adwuma ye pese yedi saa sika ne ye wasan so akere ehu kakra ewo ma na ebi mu wo se sempo no ye kogigi saa to no e wa abefo ntinta kwan so a beba ne se saa nwuma ne ade nyina ebegu honorable minister ye da wase but for me enu wo ha aka omni ebedi nkomo ye wi a na me de mic na ma na asem bisa na sa adwenkyira wono woso de ato aban anim e wo saa town hall meeting ni obekasa I chat to obey Minister for Finance owura Ken Ofori-Atta na nkasa na mom saa bre moma yemfa nsembɔ kɛseɛ enka me ho na yentu nsamfrɛ member of parliament ofi efutu onoram so obedi kan kafante ana honorable mubwana ono obedi kan kafante na honorable ibia ifi ase na oda eche hen titru akwan ho asem a yerka sande wara the road fund no aka ho bi sika ye hia nde boso tv obi are demonstration hia na akwan o hia na akwan o hia na akwan o sika ye hia za ya akwan ho adwuma them E-Levy obey den wa boy won me mfa nsem boy mfa nhia honorable Alex Afenyo Marking.
Opinion Finance Minister Oye Onyamfo Kenoforiata and Mami Esla Owusu Ekofo Oye Communications and Digitalization Minister Otipunechi Aban Mpanyinfo Asofo Ankrankro Ejumayefo Ana Ganamba Ewabri Oye Menyije the Menya Kunya the Merkasama Ben Ifa Yen E-Levy Mejizi there the Aban or the taxi be announced there or the Bibiriba Oba Trisikefi and Kutukuma yet no one sempi Zauri Sinde on Yamaha Zamijis do in church room and no one the money yeruti Ozikan Metro one adrin Akwichi Kakra Oye Abano Wadi Oye campaign the one to Aba on farming Aba what to no one soon do and Omampain Akufado in the Oti Egodo. Time party iwo opposition Okeken Sembi Nenyu Suazi Hun Oba Bemaza Obotum Waye Yena Yete Yenu anum so na wo abem na wo so wo hyehyei bi a Ghana fo yenyi tua na odube bi na se yekade de mazi ye ba ye be ya anwon so wo se de bi ahia na ye wa abem de mazi MPP fo mu ba muruntum nye menye mu ko nsam kra na ebiem ye ka free SHS Yeruka electricity tariffs, Sika Yetua, Yezi Enyan Mukania, Yeka nursing training allowance, Yeka teacher training allowance. Damin Zama Mabubo Ninara. Tama MPP party, our opposition. And this Abana no Wado, Simi Pika there. On them there, electricity. A kawaye boy to produce electricity in tin. Abandon room until electricity do. Inti yem prepaid in Yakokoto na wasa. Ye complain. Oman penny na we fido onya kukuruka there. Sentry biwo osande a kawo. Nurses training allowance, teacher training allowance. We if you was a cowbinti waruntum. The marasuna moframa dudua na wa pass 1 BC or the work secondary school. Went to one call because he can if he. They be America, I may say, Emi secondary school at Mokren or Yadum, normal Mokro secondary school. Zamepia can you there? The men's a main nara no or Yahawa no over Ghana. Abana no what do see the waruntum na one young yin na yin. MPP party eba sam no okay for MPP party ne kada debi ahyan ye botum ya yen ye on into woman hen akwanya on seso nyankopon ya adom NDC if you do ma MPP bay the menzamen nyinara oye free SHS a was ye ntumi yen nyankopon adom ye them national teacher training allowance, nursing training allowance, abundant science bay. Electricity, obiara and dan join there. Electricity, tariffs na no over so no botuma before. Or before I mean on your yajitum, yajimu dese. Wo naramun, aban amfa tax biara amba menye wo ka say yenyi free SHS levy na yenyi free SHS tax rather no aban taxes are na NDs aban ahyehye gu wo de o de yetuan opanyin kenoforiata otehi oba parliament obotwitwa taxes ni nyare mu odu baby yenuanu NDs fo say na taxes nyina na morotwa akoi mo be then normal finance government expenditure. The records are there. Abani yiji taxes fifi akonim otetew baby oil otetew do. Abani until now impose new taxational measures are overburden Ghanaians. The records are there. Na E-Levy ofihi. Mpanyinfo ayeshemu ha. Yenyina yenyu anda the COVID bi reba. Oba say gozi. Oba ma nkrofo won adwuma akofom. Oba ma akwentu ahaw ende ne mu nsem pii. Wiase ne bebiara abani biara rebre osande sikasama all there okodo na abani tum ozini dwuman da misika ni bi ni wo. Nti yabaye ne dan. Abana asam oro karanyi de. Minyimu ezi no kwar. Mreba social intervention programs may impose a tax to finance them. But easy, baby, I do. Or they solve in Zama Akase bien or Oman Ghana. On in your base. Yen roads, Yanakwan, Yanamo Frama, Wope, Ejuma, Aye. And paying for Minister of Roads Waha. Mekat Neguano as road fund chairman, naming him there. A gun hit wom papa. It's in Crawford Cowbay 5 billion. Sika Abano, Sikana Abano, or 30 million. Itua Quesata in Yamanze. Itua Adra Mansakawa in Yamanze. One and into an account. Nano Crani Goro boys. Then in Biobi Sene a certificate bimam. Na mu da certificate na ko viral. Ehwe WhatsApp na certificate na nanto wa che. Obi aso onyimobi na wojiji nkofo woniska. We need a system, a verifiable system, a reliable system. Obe create a certainty. You're a businessman. You can your business. And there's no certainty attached to the outcome of your business. Your cost of doing business increases. Or you even better forget about it. Problem all when you something there. Road tolls bosom 6 million, 7 million. Afimun ahin. Now a kilometer of a road obakos ahin. Them 6 million on yen koduhe. Nambomno yemfa entubo oti da membra. Yaziba enhyehyɛ wɔ ho no aban benya sika bi a no mu yedula regularly no yebo ho do contractors wo tua ho nka na sɛ contractor yɛ adwuma no wo tua nka wa ɔbɛyɛ de na wasana bedo ontum mba yɛn nyinara yɛ wɔ parliament yɛkɔ yɛn mpesuda nsama wo bi sɛ yan de daba na ɛbɛyɛ kɔni roads minister or answer question chen minister of parliament because MPBR was a opede why you con iti mesre yehia za yebotum na yeza ye na akon na yetum na yetua akontractors funuka contract or ye dwuma offer obi a onkitansa na dwuma kra obi a wanko school offer obi a weko machine operation orphan university graduate engineer wafan open management team obi oye finance oye accountant oye dam inti contractors for say yetum years yenyu rehwe ho na dwuma ne ya up manage the economy so that what the government expects to have in terms of growth in Kenya. Until we can't allow that sector to continue to suffer. And Mijizi there, E-Levy is one major answer. Second, Finance Minister, also you start. At on your base. Yanim Brente, says Sierra Zo Oho Cassini or Mampain Akufado ni free SHS in it. From a Warburg graduate if university. And a Dudua Warburg Yimzi Wagana no on the phone. Obi we secondary schooler. Another Oko technical school we I know we university or pay Jumaye. Anna Yazu Obi Biaba Abene Jumana. So police was a Fibia war for 10,000. Immigration 10,000. Fire service 10,000. Ahina obo to wafa. Ekwa bruchi mema. When ye osande ankwankre juma wa hye mekena. Za eja finance minister oya papa no ye mobora ama. Je owa boter oye ne juma hu de. Nkankata ma woso onya homekampon osemeye ekwa ha oroko osemeye because ona no zi dese de ankrankra dwuma na ama wedu bebi a wedu nti ozenankasa ne personal experience no all relate and telling us that e wanyimsi a wazi ye dwuma na sabio enyi sika e ye mobor eriko bank akaji bosia ye mu binum breboase wa ankrankra dwumayem na yenyim bank loan ekaja ebrowum especially when you are a starter abanin hyehyɛ there them E-Levy part of it was rebɔhwɛ nyanimba na wewe university nyanimba na wekosua nsa no dwuma bi nyanimba na wo nyimzi bi de wankasa so wo pɛdɛ wo yɛ wɔn ankrankra dwuma osande so onun wo hye mekena enye hie nyina na yekeches edwuma wa abem na kyɛdɛ abanin edwuma sam rekodo na yɛkasa nyinara enya so a yɛyɛ amanyɔfo yɛtie yɛn ho and a forum like this yɛmba pretend there's a more kawofom yɛnte oya yɛte was all politicians kafra wozi sika wozi sika wezi ana yɛnte muka na monka no kware inti sa muka na dama na the main concern there how would that money be utilized dembre minister okay there is going to be a transparent system emi no yowo yebotum ya track it abanizi dem E-Levy bay no kwenyi contractors use deside wotua wanka no kwenyi yebotum yezihu deside embrenten nketesia dodo a wokitensa na dwuma a wokita nyimzi de wopede woye wankrankra dwuma worinya access to capital to do their business then we can be sure that indeed aban nenum kasa okan no ozaye dwuma no kwakra dem be music kan kan no abani is free SHS riba no wambeji tax in fee enche so it means there comparing ambeyo ku ebien ebi atena bem ebi akọ position ebi asana abebio se covid amba na sikasam anya basa minjinzi de inchaban zidam E-Levy baba to survive as a government because abani wo track record the oben otetil tax do ibi compose oyi fi ho meanwhile no yerbebe nyina no abana nka de mama mensa do says ya mebo county free SHS metwem abana nka dem abana nka nche teacher training nurses there look says ya yehu de sikenyi wonti allowance ni yetwem meanwhile no abani heska no za solve critical nzeme bia obobo hen now the politics of it I mean emi de bia meka de politics de me ye MPP obisu ye CPP or your competition se nyimpa na anka sentiam a obe de na wa babem abazinti no ide de bi obonsem mam so no ya ze papam po a aka ye politics nti no oyedo oka bibi odu twa ozibotu ya tibida oye no mampanyin kufo ozisikas aka hye fango ne hwehwem magana yetu fango meka de was a crow castle the mabre aborɔfo yi wɔdze fango kɛkyerɛ ɔmanpanyin kufoɔ yɛte wɔ radio do pii wɔs o fango no a wɔs wɔehu no ɔnyɛ nokware da Ghana yɛnam hi ne yɛ Kenya fango eyi mpo sise ɔyɛ adwongo yɛte obi bi a ɔwɔ ha biara no ozi ho dɛsɛ nanso n'ekyir no ebaase na yɛhu ne yɛhu dɛ ɔyɛ nokware fango aba Ghana mpa yɛtu ndɛ sanyɛ dɛm fango yi a yɛnyɛ yi a kyɛ yɛgyina hin nti Ghana mba yɛmfa NDC sam NPP sam nto nkyɛn budget no yɛapass wɔ parliament yɛn NDC fo na yɛpass budget no pɛpɛɛpɛ wanka dɛ deɛ oppose rate records will bear me out consensus yɛwie yɛwɔ biribi a wɔfrɛ no appropriation na nanyi dɛ aban sika biara aban ohia tum efi parliament ansan was spend ɔno nso yɛapass by consensus now apass budget ewie na apass appropriation is aban ko spend aban respend no benya sika no wɔ he nti sika no obenya na otum na ɔze ayɛwo roads na mmɔfra ma wɔ adwumasam akɔdo no na sɛ ɛsɛ bio ɔno dze menyewon yɛ adwene a na ebi aka na kyerɛ dɛ hɔ na politics in ɔreba ba ma wɔanyi som dɛ yɛn nuanom wɔatena abɛn me de yi wɔn yɛ bɛyɛ adwene dɛ yes initially wɔsɛ wɔn yɛ adwene ekyiri wɔsɛ wɔn wɔsɛ wɔn yɛ nkyɛn wɔn yɛ 1%. Finance minister waka ne name also telcos no ɔne wɔn akasa wɔso 0.25 bi ze wɔso wɔbutu wɔn atew da man nti yɛnhwɛ ne fareba nye inde ehyiezi nti Ghana mba enuanom nti America yi de wɔn ma yɛnyɛ gyezi wɔ nhyehyɛ yi mu osande abani yi obi biara a ɔwɔ Ghana ni aban po nya adwen begya atom dɛ asɛm biara aban kae dɛ onye tuma ɔbɛyɛ nhyehyɛe biara a ɔde n'ano kae no sɛ enyu ohu ni a aswat there is no way a Ghana nyi bi botuma egyina beebi waka de oh dam akufo ada abani ɔwɔ opposition ɔka de ɔba ɔbɛyɛ dam ɔbɛn mpo ɔnyɛ hwee enyi aban ne nya adwen po ntum nka osande za wɔkɛn wɔ manifesto promise mu no was really adwuma it can be 100% that I concede but largely it's been implemented nti no wɔnyɛ gyizi dɛ nyɛ ndaadaa bi na mo w'ani som dɛ mbere ɔde hene anyimi sɛ Nyankopɔn yɛ adom no yɛ pass azia Ghana fo wɔbɛhu no mu mfaso ibi esi da wɔ mampanyin kufoɔ na abredo ibi esi wɔ akufo ado na abredo na ɛbɛsan yɛhu bibi papa wɔ abani mu nti wɔn yɛn nyinaa yɛnte yɛkyiri Nyankopɔn ni nhyɛ wɔn dɛ wɔetie mu mɛda wɔn ase pii nyame nhyɛ wɔn deɛ
wɔn mɛmfa nsɛmbɔ kɛse ma the honourable Alexander Fenyomaki member of parliament for Efutu na ano di sɛm na nkyerɛkyerɛmu a ɔdze ama hene nnuanom na adɔfoɔ nkyɛn bia medze akasamu no bɛba baabi ma ɛwɔ na adwenkyerɛ ɛwɔ asɛmbise bi a ɛwɔ no wɔasɔre dze ato mpanyinfo yi wɔn anim bɛma wɔaduri mepɛ dɛ mɛfrɛ ɔman yi hɛn fotosamfo the minister responsible for finance the honourable Kenneth Nanaya Oku Kununku of Oriata. Let's receive him with a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's good to be in Koforidua. Colleague ministers, thank you very much for being here. Our pastors, thank you for blessing these occasions, members of parliament, and everyone else here. It's really an exciting afternoon for me to be here with you. And as my colleagues have said, to really talk through this issue of E-Levy and to see what we can do as a country to move forward and also move really out of the shackles of the West, where we continue to borrow so much money and then they dictate to us what we should do. So this is an emancipation of sort, and we should really take it to heart. We are the black star. We are the shining star of Africa. And there are three pillars that we deem we should incorporate, because ours is a country that leads and is an idea for the continent. So we started as the first independent sub-Sahara Africa country in Nkrumah's time. For our size, we led the whole continent into democracy. It took almost 60 years for us to then have an organ of the AU in our country, and that was the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which really it's the new independence. Emancipating ourselves politically in the 60s and then moving at this time to being the hub for investments and trade, which is the new economy that we have to. But there are three pillars that our president always wants to remind us about when we talk about Ghana beyond aid. And this, in his mind, is a political independence, and Ghana, therefore, as a beacon of democracy, and a safe space in this region. The second one being economic emancipation, Ghana beyond aid, which we really were en route to achieving before COVID. And even that, I think we are going to recover strongly for it. And the third leg, which the president has also emphasized on, is our spiritual independence. And so even in the midst of this leading politically, a great carryover in terms of our economic achievements, and now what we call the National Cathedral, which is also going to be a centerpiece of what Ghana represents. So Ghana as an idea is something that we should capture. But what does that mean? It's going to require us to be a confident, prosperous society with the human capital that is required to be able to raise our heads and lead Africa and the black race complete emancipation. But it's going to take some sacrifices on our part and a clarity for us that we are leaders and will do extraordinary things. So this is our lot, and this is where the president insists that we should step up in history to be able to achieve that and lead Africa out of this morass. And we have seen it, especially during this time of the COVID experience, where the West have left us where we should be. We have a system in Africa where literally 90% of all our pharmaceuticals are imported, and a whole series of things that create dependency. And therefore, when the global supply chain is cut, we have problems, big problems. So we went through 2017 to 2019 with incredibly stellar results as to what we as a country had been able to achieve, moving from 3.4% of growth to somewhere over 7%, reducing our budget deficits from 6.5% into about 5%, making sure that our currency did not depreciate as it used to be, and it's quite stable, and also having the necessary foreign exchange cover to make sure that we are able to support our currency and our imports. During this period, we did the impossible. We spent over 40 billion cedis on education, 14 billion on healthcare, 14.9 billion on enhancing internal security, 18 billion on flagship projects, and it just continues as to the things that we were able to do with monies that the NDC were sure we will never be able to get. So the benefits have been for all of us an all-inclusive growth in which about 1.26 million people have benefited from free SHS, 3.45 million covered by school feeding program, the NAPCO, 100,000 young persons, the largest in our history, and over 344 households given lifeline under the LEAP program. So for us, the sovereignty of our people is clear. Everybody as a citizen having a part in this enterprise of this idea of a Ghana that is confident, prosperous, and leading the nation states of the world. Our president has also earned incredible international repute, and now when Ghanaians walk outside or even here, NDC or MPP, their heads are high because they know that Akufo-Addo has done it. Let's give him a clap. So we have to continue with these initiatives. And that then is a challenge of where do we get the resources to be able to do this. Traditionally, when you are caught in such a vice, you go to petrol, you increase it, and we know the cataclysmic effect it has on all of us when we do that. So the good Lord, looking at what the president does, led us into this area of e-commerce. As the minister mentioned, we have grown from a country that was transferring about 78 billion a year in 2016 to over 500 billion this year, likely to be close to $1 trillion, 950 billion next year. Now that is a system that everyone uses, that all of us use. So when she talks about only 2.4 million people paying taxes to support the 30.8 million, you begin to see the enormity of pressure on these 2.4 million people. And how is that sustainable? How do you deepen democracy if you do not pay taxes? Your ability to challenge the political elite is muted, or you join in some underhanded things that we should not be doing. So we came back with the E-Levy. Purposely, for three reasons. Well, first, certainly to broaden the tax base, and then to increase revenue. And when you look at Ghana and the rest of our region, we have about 12.2% or so revenue to GDP, which is awfully low compared to our neighbors, 16.5% and up. That we cannot sustain. So we need to cure that. And then when you even look at the distribution of how we pay taxes, you have literally 88% being paid in Greater Accra, and Eastern region, I have that if we combine Eastern region, Ashanti region, and Western region together, they pay 3% of national taxes. That can't be right. And the population will bear me out that can't be right. So we must all find a way to what we call burden share to be able to do that. So let's dig deep in ourselves. Nobody likes taxes. But really, if you look at our debt situation, what we need to do so we raise our own money to be able to build the roads that Kwesi Amwakwata is looking for, that all of you are looking for, then we must pay our way through it. If we begin to look at our employment issues, and I think that's a place that is really passionate for our president. And there's good reason for that, because what are we saying? We are saying that under the age of 24, you literally have 56% of our population in that zone. And when you look at the economically active people in our country, you have about 11 million people, and that also then requires that we look at that population. Now, if you were to even begin to look, because of the issue of education, you have about 4.6 million people at primary school. By the time we get to JHS, we move to 2.6 million. So what happened to the 1.8 million of those children of ours? From JHS to SHS, we move from 2.6 to 1.2 million. So what happened to that group of people in that category? And then from SHS to tertiary schools of all nature, we get to about 500,000. So 700,000 people have vanished. And then we train them in the tertiary institutions, and maybe 10% or less may get jobs. So we have an explosive problem on our hands, not because it might only cause chaos, but the sovereign rights of every individual as a Ghanaian must be something that we care about. We cannot hide our head in the sand, pretending that this is not an issue that would cripple our country and really demean the status of our persons as Ghanaians. But we are people who are the black star, who should be shining, who should be leading in the world. So, President is extremely worried about unemployment, and therefore this 10 billion Youth Start program, the largest that the country has ever seen, young pioneer pales in comparison to it or anything else. And this also came through effective burden sharing. Burden sharing in the effect that we then approached the banks, and the banks agreed to provide 5 billion for private sector and small businesses for the next 3 years. We approached our international financial partners. They agreed for another 2 billion, that's 7 billion to support this effort. And government itself, through the E-Levy, will do 1 billion cedis a year to ensure that this 10 billion package enables us to take care of our youth, which is really important to each one of us. Because really, at the center of our party is the reverence for the individual citizen. Because it is that human capital that makes the difference in all that we do. And it is something that our friend, Second Deputy Majority Leader mentioned, that we have all experienced. Because yes, you see all of us here like that, but we all had very humble beginnings, and therefore I grew up in Chebi. Lived a mile away from school, wake up in the morning, you go to the river, get your water, put your plantain in your pocket, and walk 1 mile from where we live to Chebi Government School. If you get to the school, because Brim is on the way and you might decide to swim all day instead of going to school. So that was what happened. And then fortunately, Dad decided that, I have some son in Chebio, so let me find him. And that is what made the difference. The intervention that changed from you not being the smartest person in your Chebi school, because you didn't even go to school. You typically went swimming to find some okoto to catch. So that be it. And that changed the trajectory of my life to be standing here today, being the finance minister. And also, fortunately, had a strong mother who decided not to abort because she was young. And a young man from the royal family had come home for holidays, and one thing led to the other. And the poor woman was at fault for my dad's problems. But anyway, so this is it. So the issue of President Akufo-Addo insisting on senior high school is because he knows the transformation that would occur in that. But then it leads to human capital that must also be helped on its way forward to realize, who they are and what they can do for themselves and the nation. So over this period, we have spent all of this wonderful money to be able to bring our economy into some stability until COVID hit. And COVID, has been devastating globally, and therefore all of us had to recalibrate one way or the other how we move forward. But even in the middle of that confusion, you had a president who was clear in his mind, as he said, don't ever waste a crisis. So charge the Ministry of Finance to come up with a transformation program, even in the middle of that. That's the Mother Cares Over Tampa program, so that we move our legs, we continue to look towards the sun, and find a way that when the COVID is over, we will be ahead of the game. So we have the issues of debt, we have the issues of employment, and we have Kwesi Amwakwate's issues that we have to deal with, which we all embrace because we want roads, we want digital infrastructure, we want physical infrastructure. And this is what we have brought to Parliament. What do we do about this? And the numbers are clear that the economy is shifting from the physical to the virtual, and therefore we need to be up ahead of the game. So we then brought to Parliament a 1.75% levy. As the minister has mentioned, this is not the most egregious tax that you could get, but it really leads to the issue of inclusion of all of us to build our society and wherever we really want to go to transform this land. And that has been the subject of this debate. The question is, do we want to move to this new Jerusalem? Do we want to move to this new El Dorado so that we can, as a people, show that with our own resources, and there's plenty of it, as we see various buildings coming up in this country. And even as you look at 1D, 1F, I think we started the 181 or so 1D, 1Fs around. Nobody thought it was possible, of which 106 are complete around the districts, and 81 odd and more are happening. You can also see what happened of Planting for Food that has resulted, in a sense, in actually being able to export some food at certain points in time. So that really is the reason. Can we sustain our debt and pay for it ourselves so we don't go out borrowing so much? Can we have the resources to support employment, which is key and affects all of us, and really is very dispiriting and breaks down the dignity of our people? That is not the people that we are. And then can we support our infrastructure to be able to then increase productivity, move around the country, and create that modern society that we talk about. And that really, in a sense, is also now going to be elevated by AFCFTA, which is here, so that the issue of regionalizing our economy is now upfront with us. And that is a logistics hub, automobile hub, tourism hub, healthcare hub, etc. And then you see the modern economy that our forebears were confident that we will be able to construct in our land and show Africa and the world the way to go. So when people say why E-Levy and why you should reduce it, well, we listen. We truly listened and said, well, maybe when something is new, you can have very negative thoughts on that. But we've heard a lot of the history of that, and that people, one way or the other, in opposition, would oppose anything, whether it's good or bad. But we all know, that the council norma effort, and see a day, sika, and effort. In the area, I am sika, I am friend talk at the so that really is what we talk about when we say we want this E-Levy to ensure that we are masters of our own destiny, that what happened with COVID will not have such a devastating effect because we'll have our own resources and we'll be able to guide ourselves in the way in which we've managed. So we've come a long way from being in the grips of the IMF to our freedom to be able to do what we do. And I think people forget what happened when we were in the IMF program. We couldn't pay for nurses and teachers. We couldn't hire anymore because there were restrictions on that. I mean, it's just really thinking you can go back to Egypt in a way in which we have forgotten how difficult and pernicious that master from Washington was. So we can deal with them for them to give us advice, but we need not ever get into IMF program. And if we don't do this E-Levy, you are just pushing yourself in a way that would potentially end up in such a disaster. And I mean, there was a warning of that because last week was a very difficult week for the country. Last week we got downgraded by Fitch, ostensibly because they did not believe we could raise the revenues that we had forecasted because we were fighting about E-Levy. But what does that mean when you get downgraded and the spreads widen for your bonds? Essentially, what we are saying is that if you go back to the market, you may pay about 500 basis points more, which means that if I borrowed $1 billion, I pay $50 million more each year. The bonds are usually 10 years, and so 50 times 10, that's $500 million a year. All because we were arguing and not being able to make up our mind on resources that we needed. So we need to moderate that because the consequences are quick. But I'm sure last week there were other things that also were difficult for us as a country. The Bogosu incident was not good for anybody. And then, of all places, Comoros could beat us in soccer. Now that should not ever happen again. I hope the coach has been taking our geography out of our country by now. So this is where we are with E-Levy and why we therefore need it, why we should be passionate about it. It will give us about 6.9 billion Ghana cedis, but it's really the beginning because as you put these taxes in place, you sharpen the administration of it, and as the growth trajectory as described by the minister will be clear, that is going to be an anchor for our taxation and therefore continuing capacity and robustness of our ability to get the revenue mobilization that is required. Now, the E-Levy, what does it cover? I'm sure we'll do a Q&A on that. So it's mobile money transfers between accounts on the same electronic money issuer, mobile money transfers from an account on one EMI to a recipient on another EMI, transfers from bank accounts to mobile money accounts, transfers from mobile money accounts to bank accounts, and bank transfers on a digital platform application which originate from a bank account belonging to an individual. Then also, what does it not cover? Cumulative transfers of 100 cedis per day by the same person. So if you transfer 100 cedis per day, there's no E-Levy on that. I remember being Frenchiniko or Achimhimai is the new improved name, where a lady said, Nasada, yendi 100 cedis you could for a dos. Na busumi biya say enya 3,000 cedis a month for a dimia transfer. In the other, 100 cedis exemption, no, one of the audience a high dodo. It's a 30 cedis, 20 cedis na a hojuma. So Hokram po nipatiasia say, we should encourage that. But really, we have pegged it at 100 per day, which means 3,000 a month you will not touch. And I'm not sure there are any poor people below above the 3,000 level. So transfers between accounts owned by the same person would also not be touched by E-Levy. Transfers for the payment of taxes, fees, and charges, and anything on the Ghana.gov platform would also not be charged. Electronic clearing of checks is exempt, and specified merchants, i.e. merchants whose payments to commercial establishments are registered with GRA for income tax and VAT purposes. And then transfers between the principal, master agents, and agent accounts would also not be charged. So really, in the end, that becomes, where the tire meets the road. And what we are saying, in effect, is in looking at these issues of debt, of employment, of infrastructure, I think we should all look to support this. 1.75% of monies that you send around is not the money that is going to kill you, but the cumulative effect of moving from 2.4 million to maybe 11, 12 million paying their part of our taxes will just create this pool of resources for us to be able, as a country, to continue to hold our heads high and be that free, independent nation of pride with the three pillars of political independence, economic emancipation, and spiritual, I don't know what the word should be, also spiritual elevation would occur for us as a country. So let's really hold our MPs' feet to the fire to let them know that we understand who we are as a people, a proud nation who want to pay their own way. Yes, we haven't for a long time. And then there are issues of accountability. And in going through over Christmas to Enyinam, Apapem, Himai, and then Pram Pram in Greater Accra, it was very clear, as Honorable Markin mentioned, the issue of accountability. So how do I then come to you every quarter or to Parliament to show how those resources were used, to show what we have used E-Levy for, so that we all move in step and begin, to reduce the cynicism on politicians and accountability for all of us. But when you pay, you are likely to have that voice to be able to yell, shout, and demand that. Yeah. So we have the Youth Start program as part of it going forward. We'll be able to sustain our debt and reduce it and pay our way through, and the issues of infrastructure, digital and physical, would also, especially roads, will also be taken care of. So, ladies and gentlemen, this really is an opportunity to ask other questions that may be on your heart, and to understand the sincerity of where government is coming from, with even the limited resources, the amazing record that we have established, and what we need to do these 3 years, and then to continue to break the 8, because we have been shown to be faithful of little, and therefore we'll do more. So, as the Bible says in Genesis, if these people can speak one language, then there will be no restraint to what we can do. So let's speak this one language of E-Levy. Let's make it pass, and there will be no restraint to where we'll go as a people. But we need the spirit of courage, of love, and self-discipline for us to get there. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Ma Yemonsem, Honorable Minister for Finance, Honorable Ken Oforiatta, Honorable Bano Beyin Seminibiano, Obebo Ninkomodi Tofa Ewotrimu, Jumedi GTV, F&A Live, Joy News, Metro TV, Net2 TV, GH1 TV, City TV, TV3, to Me TV, Asasi Radio, Asempa FM, Kesben Television, Happy FM, Afima FM, Home Based Television, Bright TV, Ago 96.9 FM, Anansi Radio, Bosome FM, Ofi FM, ETV, YFM, any stations a whole door I organ has a F&A Live. Baby, you know, so was in Bisebi and Argentine, Sabri, and Ka Otto and Sao Baby, I wanna, Medicine Savage also, Namama, yet the Akasamuna bro, me who are brandy be your share, and Tomata, dear short sleeve, Ewa Hasi, them so no bedi kind. Na mpalto yemfa Akasamuno, Emma, Openi Bako. Yemfa Akasamuno, Openi Bako. Nti befia se wechiro, Bako, Mienu, Miensa, Eni Enai. Nti Openi Pacho for Mike ne start if you remember. Openi Pacho bodi ya no achire baby a ufi na adwenchire bi ana asem bi se bi wo ho a na odi ato mpanimfo anim. Seni mpanimfo ede anidie ama ye nyina ne edi nkomo no. Adwenchire bi a ye beji atom anidie ni obuo na wo se fa sa kwan no so. O da baby ni se ekode a na ho de o to nsa fra mi se mindu mo Mike ne baby e wo no. Ati di se ebe ne kwan. So Openi Pacho kasa.
Good afternoon. Pacho me pesa me ka twi kakra.
Pacho Fro say.
The friend Dr. Isaac Osafo Champon.
Dr. Isaac Osafo, but Dr. na medical doctor na ni. Pacho kasa. Dr. Isaac
Osafo Champon.
Osafo Champon.
I am the same many as I can in a chairman E-Levy home. And he said, E-Levy no, the discussions near the nano, or me, my junior mudia, a idea a web wow mine. But issues in Kitty or Honma, Senia in for church, you know, the drinks and the pines were no. Maybe Buru in for Hanamo, especially Honorable Ken Oforiatta, Selka say, taxi Chiaohui, 77 per year, but the person me did two jazz, the good opportunity me E-Levy many Jim Pan said. Yawonkofobi or many more artisans in particular, carpenter for, mason for, electricians, or move a bow down so mal. A Juman, Ombeye Bibiama, and so tax our Mutriano, 77 per year, direct tax a year. Eti, Wamajunimuno, E-Levy, even though Abema, Nkofobi Biomtia direct taxes already, no, Ombesen Triabino, but on South one in North, Intino, Nefuaso. Nemon suggestions when I'm person can be too judged.
Pacho you.
Say, Abaimbe to me, Anka, Yebenya, a separate account. Ya, E-Levy Sika Bano, and Honmon Ebeko. Near who say, Ebia Busumi Biano, Sasikaino, Nankonko Fra, the consolidated fund that AB on Bayis Cano say, Ahuchebia Baby, the Paco before for name woman who say, Sap. Futui, Sike Gumuni, na Sebani say or see a BBI, Yadi and Sakobo Muani, Yadi and Yadi. Na second suggestion, when they say possible, Ntabusumi and Sabia Abain, and my Hunu, E-Levy Sikanoa, Yadigiano, Dudua Yenya, Nijuma Dia, Abain this Canoayo. It may find says a pine or say, or the ya, Aquaya Yadia, it will be on the ground for people to appreciate it. Say, dear, and near my work, in Kata, so my yes, the Bayano, and Unia, you be who say, oh, any Triano, near the Yeni. And the Crackrano, you say, I say, Omo 800 Ghana cedis, you know. So, we transfer to this cabin in 200 that untriashi. Say, possible, and a bit to me send this car as much as 3,000, 10,000 our mobile money. So, if it means so, and say, yeah, the Vietnam scan a doom pen will be at our level, no, yen charging cobium, send a bear, and car, Obia, or to be send a bear 10,000. Uncle could yes, 1.5, non so says can you be green man.
Matewa semna simpacho me mon semmano, me mon semmano. Osi onu edi kan onu de osusu se asempa mom enko osusu se abrebia ne yembu ho akonta sempo no ye benya account for bi ne enko consolidated fund mo a yemfengu mema mpanimfo a kire se mrama ho kwan se enye ne saa osan so kire se nka bosumi miensa bia no yembu ho akonta na empo ekosoro no enka de abroni friend cap na threshold bi be wo ho anka e de account pam chomo de akasemu na ma ni poto su mienu ana opani akasemu no wo ho mpache okasa ye ni bre ye hwe wo TV ni radio ahodo so timpache pam cho ni microphone no wo form kakra
yeah your family ama buchi
ama
Boche.
I'm a patron of Juma.
Ghana Library Authority.
Ghana Library Authority.
Tewu of TUC.
Tewu, okay.
Yes. So, every say E-Levy a year. Now, my suggestion is 100 citizens, which is meant for those at the, let's say, the poorest level. Let's raise it from between 300 to 500. As I say, also, young people school. We want to send them 200 or 300. For them also be paying 1 or 2 emergencies that will crop up. So I'm suggesting that let's raise this from 100 between 300 to 500.
I'm out to make kind of cheek a crabby, mammy. Mr. Anna, we're treating yet.
Maybe say, yeah, raise 100 now, yeah, them let's say wait for those at the grassroots car. Yeah, raising no.
Embra saying
between 3 to 500.
Between 3 to 500.
Yes.
I'm a butcher, Tewu. Pacho Matimida was say. Akasamuni and Fanny Porto me and San Femano. Na Yenti Nasem. Pacho say abutre. Tuntumno way. I was almost sanitizing we say. Timomo sanitizing we say. They are sanitizing Pacho Isu. Na Pacho Kasa.
The Pacho your friend Kwame Bafo.
Kwame
Bafo.
Kwame Pacho Ede Juma.
Me a driver.
We a driver. Pacho Itio.
Me kasa me fi ajoso abodri wa yefo. Koforidua na me mom de me dwen ne say E-Levy no enka ebeboa yen na ade ba ko a eha me ba ko ne say Ghana ye ka say saade we beboa ya na ye de aye amanyosem ye de ye amanyosem a MPP for sorry I was say NDC for de nenye NDC for sorry was say MPP for de nenye na yewura ba ko wa fi mu na me fa ne currency President Mills what the VAT e buy na VAT na o de buy no asama e kan ne say na MPP for say VAT ne nye e be high adwene e be ha o mu say enso so VAT ne buy no MPP buy no wa ntwam oto aso enti say VAT no buy na watimi aba na wato aso dia say sa E-Levy so ba dachi ankwa ma bia NDC for so ba so a omo se anye o omo mfo aso enso nya ade a sa ade we ba omo betwam enti mesre ye nyina ye moa na sa ye boa na sa E-Levy ba na sa betumi aboa na ye manom ye nuanom obi a obihia adwuma ene ade atumi aboa de a ye mfo aso na ye moa na asem ba ko ha me ne se yewura abambe babin o se obegi sa ade o yatum nti o tu kwan akohwe ne ho yare enti yesre no ontena ase ne anyintum na ewia wako masem
Kwame our driver ejiso wo say wo de ojitum na emo politics no na yenyai owura bagbe ni ha na emo akwantu no otu ye ntumi nka nsisu dua say obegi atum nti na oye ne say no de ntumi nka ne sa yɛhwɛm ne yɛnka ɔman no ho asɛm na sɛnea wɔaka yɛmfa politics no ɛnto nkyɛn yɛbɛgye adwenkyerɛ mmienu na mama mpanimfoɔ ayi ano pakyɛ ɔpani okura kasamu no hwan na yɛkɔ ne hɔ
Yes.
ɔpani okura kasamu no hwan na yɛkɔ ne hɔ
Your family, Nana, say,
Nana
Pacific Ophodia. The Dika Mema Wakaba, Eba Honorable Belfi, Pesuaso. Na Maya de Pass Mobile. Na program Papa, the message will say, Mama, Chini Noson, Brofono Dosso Dodo. If you say, Mifia crowd be my name, some in fact they come on the or market. Market of a do my America say, I feel quite a blown brofakers here. You hear ammonia, to be share tell you another wound to me. And I'm going to say, now, Madame Esla, and I also. I was mammy, I dare on your bed, Papa, to me, and me the car speed and the buy. Locking of Bidian and now, Madame, so the other Nakuchi. It's a mess, Remo. A Jena Moyano, a win here. None ya, Honorable Eric Opoku. No, yet press conference. Chi, no, or Chemu. A two MPP for so, mine a bluffo. Ah, market for so, and soon a tax, no. Who come market, a judge for the tax, no. Oh, the Michano. Nipa do say, 77 only my dear, Cacrebi, also Tiadiana say. Na ya Tiasiano. Do na enko school kwachiri.
Na say, yada wase ati na nkomo na kasa wo ho bibia na.
O say,
nkomo na kasa wo ho asem bia na.
Dia no kan say, mesrem say ya say that dey na iko no. Akamo de bema MPs no. Na nkan pesuaso no. No akono chirechire mu e man krofo ati ase yie. Because recently honorable Belfi town hall meeting bi okokoko mra ma dia ne fine. E become be na sa na nka MPs no okọ ne pesuaso a no organize no achire mu yie. Masemo ano no me da wase.
Na say mame nka bibi kakra bi nkyerɛw. And penimfo akasa nyina honorable afanyo market okan afante honorable Eslo so okan no brofo kan ne twi. Sanse TV stations to be brief fan of brofo me amegina hey brofo ne fanti nyina makabi finance minister so say na me kan no wie na obebo ne tofo a ono so be kire na asem ni na tofa mu otwi MPs so bebre ago MPs bebre amuhu won wa hey dia wo kan no anomo ye omo kwa probo e kire mu o baabi a wo so omo kire mu nyina ti wasem ne yate na supreme pacho mefa de twato mienu na mama mpanimfo eya no
Ago.
Openi a ukura kasa mutuntum no be kasa ansa na de ukura kokko na kasa. Pacho kasa.
Yo mpate from Seth Ajay Kwabi.
Seth, dejuma na ye.
Me a teacher ni.
Seth oye teacher. Seth ye tie o.
Yo, masam ne say eto de untumi ntran mu kasa untu ato eto de ye. Yenim se no ne de kire man. But the hadwen ne say the bia see obi akodiska. For example, auditor general report say 12 billion ayira. But we are chasing 7 billion. Da ben ye be da nyane wo Ghana ha ye be te se obi akodi Ghana sika na edina kogina court abua no for de na kotum anase ya gisika na firi no ho it is alleged for in kogina court ho e ma asem no nye foolish case na etosum yenu does it mean say ye all formal sector etua tax rodo no E-Levy bay ye de nipa bi be ka ho amomatua ye nso ye betua more ana ye betie de so
Me pacho mate de twato meko oba no kura microphone kokko na sana ba minister pacho orura says teacher say person tia say watete no from say auditor general say 12 billion ayira na 12 billion ayira de na nkoje no na wo beji 7 billion wo E-Levy mu pacho no ebepe anu yie kakra e wo wankasa ho directly ansa na edikan no ago ansa na edikan no Rama on kwan say create account for from Fenkutumu ana ena nkuntabuo adwenkyerɛ baako ne sɛ nka bɛyɛ bosome mmiɛnsa bi a yɛmbu ho akontaa na obi ɛho sɛ ampa simpo ana teku ana dama na ɛgyeeɛ na wei ni ɛdɛ ɛho adwuma minister mɛba wɔ hɔ nkae ne deɛ yɛ adwenkyerɛ nti mmienu wei mɛba wɔ hɔ abɛgye adwenkyerɛ mpakyɛw de twa toɔ na maba minister hɔ
Mpanimfoɔ mema mo nyinaa adwo masɛm baako a mepɛ sɛ meka ne sɛ saa adeɛ wei ɛyɛ adeɛ papapaa na mepɛ sɛ mehu sɛ nti a moantumi anyɛ town hall meetings yi ansa na ɔpanyin de akɔ na asan aba yi ebiara ne education die mpamotɔ mambɔ me de yɛfrɛ me Joyce Yosinjan meyɛ retired teacher biribi wɔ hɔ na yɛ papa sɛ yɛ yɛnim sɛ CST bɛyi
there was so much opposition. Nti bibi papa say but now was some would Emma yen asifo no yate asie na yen a yatumi kasa yi anka yatumi akon for heavy granka yebe push no ama mo adwuma ayemre enti no yasra se bibi papa say ba mo famra bottom no na yen starting fear eho ansa na mo de akodu empanimfo mu afei ni amenti ase ade a ne yɛse yɛde bɛboa road fund yɛnwie yɛ na toll wɔ ɔman yi mu nyinaa mɔgya saa sika no esuampa a at least yɛkeka bɔ mu anka ɛbɛyɛ 1 kilometer of road yɛgyan nti sɛsi sɛ wei anyɛ yie a mesrɛ bisa sɛ yɛbɛsan kɔ toll anaa yɛbɛyɛ
Pacho yate mmemme mo nsɛm a ɔmo bisa nsɛm akyerɛ adwene nyinaa mɛto nsa frɛ honorable minister responsible for finance na waboa yɛn ma yɛagye ano yie ɛwɔ nsɛmfoɔ adi kan bɛ yɛwie a mɛsan aba mo hɔ yɛbɛ mprensa yɛwie a mɛsan aba mo hɔ na magye adwenkyerɛ ne nsɛm bisa minister deɛ adi kan paa ne sɛ mmara bɛma wo ho kwan ma yɛbie account ago anaa mompɛ sɛ asɛm no yɛbɛyi ano anaa asɛm no mompɛ sɛ yɛbɛyi ano yɛsrɛ mom yɛnti ano yie no minister deɛ adi kan ne sɛ mmara ma ho kwan sɛ yɛmbie account foforɔ na nkɔtɔ mu a ɛnkɔ consolidated fund no mu anaa ɛna adwenkyerɛ baako no sɛ nka bosome mmiɛnsa bi a yɛbɛtumi abu ho akontaa sɛ sei ne yɛnya sei ne yɛde ayɛ anaa nkae ne adwenkyerɛ na mmom deɛ ɛtwa to mmienu no sef a ɔyɛ teacher say wate sɛ 12 billion ayera na ɛno no auditor general kaa yɛn na kyerɛ sɛ ɛnokorɛ anaasɛ ɛyɛ bi adeɛ a auditor general adi kan hu ne mfitiase afei na mpanimfoɔ bɛ mo asukɔ san sɛ sɛ ɛnokorɛ deɛ anka n'agye nkyerɛ ne sɛ nkɛ nkɔgyeɛ no ne yɛnyae nkɔmmɔdi a aka no ɛna ayi ɛm sɛ Gladys anaa Grace Joyce say in the future na the aka wɔ anim no yɛmfi ase yɛmfi fam ansa na de akɔ soro nyɛ sɛ ɛsoro ansa na de aba minister mpatwɔ nka wotumi yi ano kakra ma yɛ a kɛbɛrɛ mo yɛmfa nsɛm bɔ nkyia minister responsible for finance.
Yo, Medasio. Obakasa Dr. Isaac, start say young artisans won't hear enti ono de young one make sure say obetia. Now we back on. And a doc, idea is me person me try on say idea de Ghana card for no ekoma GRA. That's a GRA one war at the tax identification numbers by 5.5 million. Any day Ghana card in the database you come on to another 15.5 million. Into your monodoc, 60,000 doctors and lawyers and architects and whatever own to your pay. Into your masons and artisans and well. Yeah, casa P or radio so near, I don't know. I want to me chain wall upon any cantonments, no. Once own to and I want to come to you. NTU, E-Levy, sending out by any digitalization, Vice President, Minister of Communication, a bit much yena, Senebea Obehu near OBI. It's very easy to talk about the artisans and masons. Now, once we say, if you are on car, at the moment we are on card there, then we'll be able to account for them and do that. I think the issue of separate accounts, but consolidated account, any BBA, SSA, near who what is about. I think what is really in the end key, okay, me go around the NIPA kind and accountability on a quarterly basis, and I think that should be done. And threshold, I think those will be administrative issues. If we say, start a new tax, NIPA say, on bed dodge in the day, and due to me whom we are, then you adjust the tax to be able to do that. And now, because is it Amabutri? Or can I say you move the exemption of 300 CDs and could do 300, 500. And the current say 100 CD no. Sebi, HSA Bia, Bosumi Bia, was salary and now says Sky won't send no 3,000. And if you try on 3,000, no, I just sure say a dose, sir. Now 300 to 500, no, so Sebi and Yada now over to me. Now you're in the daily, it won't affect you. There's a chance to avoid the tax. And I am driver, is it Kwame? Kwame can speak of one and the engine I bomb pie man and send a bear, Neho Betono. And send out kind as taxes idiot, opposition, Becca say, one pay and so on bar, one term. You continue, send a bear. Ibinyesika yedebeye ejuma SSA na set can Auditor General assem Auditor General report no because wants 12.2 billion and once IRA but true to the matter enye so we share report now what to me who said 10 billion out of that are collections that are going on for loans and collections that GRA is also continuing. Now GRA numbers, so they sometimes penalty, they multiply it by 3. And two virgins as Sikebi Sumho and a young of fire, and yes, sir. But still, no more people who are SSA year encourage, send a bayer, give it to me, are collected. And then another 1.8 billion was what they term irregularities. To say via MMDC, a TIA OB 300 CDs and do not fill the correct papers. And yes, Sikana Yira 14. Into Oshemua, you won't get that alarmed. Into Sika Yeshano, a Sika Yehia. You TIA taxes, no. And I was na E-Levy idiot. Say about how. Na say when him say you call baby to say London this within the idea. One tax rate could have 55 or 60%. And there's always a time to start. You start E-Levy once 1 year Juma Yuno. When you know about net now one so on will be a plea. Auntie Joyce and so say, Bibi Papa say, I don't know your mantum. When you know not your bantam. Now, told booth are somewhere okay. You ampa a bay million, 78 million. And we are going to lose from that. And the question really for us is, say what it trotromone or how move the heat and all of that, And I actually say, Nadi Krempo, as a CJ, send a bear, several sorry, Kojuma, and Yafina, watch not traffic move for another hour or so. You know, any BBA a fata. Enti Onyamibwa. E-Levy go through. Now, real roads are, of build the highways, and no, na afei deɛ yɛbɛbegin sɛ yɛ nti tolls no deɛ ɛbɛba but ɛyɛ 6-lane highway a kwesi sɛ obɛsi ama yɛn ansa na yɛakɔ sɛnea ɛbɛyɛ atrɔtrɔ asɛm ne ade montena kwan mu abrɛ na yɛwura mfitirikyiriw ne ade ne yɛgyae na yɛn life nso ayɛ better nti megye sɛ adeɛ kɔdwo na aka ne nyinaa.
Minister, that's it. You're back for second round of questions. You're back 3 round of questions. But I say, KTU Council Chair, Professor Pori, I will say, Professor, or charge drink a crap. But I say, Prof, who I had say, and Professor or charge drink. But your mammy, you have a microphone in mouth. Prof, I say, until you be fierce or prof, Namafa and 9 account, Mafa 9 account, yet to me, ATO, man. Prof, what's your mind to you?
I can be even where the self and Chakahina. What can be a camera? Mr. Abano said, on share MPs, DCs, and NCC, Kitty, na one more and church at the if they name me Bahano, Matthias, yes, and said, the Biana and Tokwawo. Radio soon. If the SCC is one of their jobs, and now this is and yes, what you want to do, so be a year back. When you have 5 minutes, Grana Costress here, a beboa, because Yaman in the cray be a clutch and Matthias here more than near a tea radio soon. As someone Mr. Moano, because yes, I know won't you, before say, yeah. And this was a young man free, yet me can be papa, as if you are not be any baby. It is our arms of government now. One person, Obama, a demudia, one de Bayo, a Jumano. Now one much retro crossing cross. Now Ubia Atias, Medasi.
Medasi, Pachopenu crackers, a moon, if it's a senior question, Kakranka, Benim has a Kakramami and Kababuami, Tipempeni 4 9 Nafa. Microphone mom na yenti almost ase osofo
hello
pacha me ba ma ntie sofo ngina me bra ho why
if I'm sure your friend Reverend Dr. Michael Usutego mesre senior
Reverend Tego
me ba cho senior prof kan no me ne ne ya dwen ka ye ya sofo ni sei no enipa dodo na hye yase entinka mesre se adepa se badia ka yɛmfra asɔfoɔ no nyinaa ne yɛnyɛ obi nkyerɛkyerɛ yɛ mu na yɛnte aseɛ yɛ na yɛn nso yɛtumi kɔ a yɛpirikyi kora awie ne yɛyusu 5 minutes ne yɛtumi de kyerɛkyerɛ members ma megye di sɛ ɛbɛkɔ meda mo ase
meda ase sɔfoɔ kan na maka bible mu kristo kora sɛ yɛmfa caesar deɛ ma deɛ ɛwɔ caesar yɛsɛ sɛ toɔtua no kora mpo no ɛfie a sɛ bible mu ɛnyɛ nnɛ Pacho Penny be a blue shirt but red tie. Young corner one after mammy you cry Mike near Bapenny. Mammy, Pacho, yes, mammy will cry Mike.
You me that's
me
Pacho, your friend Margaret, Mr. Market Woman. Miss Ramo so Massam Kakra say, I dear ya by the abbey, Miss Sunamin Tiasia Kura. And then me buy her in a much rich him na Matias. If you say, ya near your home, now you call IMF ya. One way you cry, you go catch the say, young coaches homosexual too. If we say, yes, I can show manu, you need shake. No moment, I mean, Kakra and Sadia be our start here and Kakra. If you say, yeah, you can't cry for funny, ma. Meja and cry for no doom, yeah, mobile money in your near the mawum. Eti Yadaroma, ye triaha, not Udi manor, dear, or no to the back, you know, better trias or so. Etika munye di bibi kakra mayen. Jidia ya jitum pa. Eti se yesuro se yebeko se IMF no. Ochira nko yesuro yakọ kachira ye se munyi homosexual tu. Enye sa yensa so akọche nanum. Eti di obeka bi yese se yedi so. Eti no yempe. Eti mra na mudi aba ne de. Ni se na menti ase. Enso ene me ba ha no mate ase eti mi ko dwa aso. Me de ko. Na ebom yesra mo se mudi ye starti Kamunya bibi kakra mayen. Madisra no
Minister Pacho kasa merchant accounts ma menom ne anuanom ma edididwa merchant accounts omo so betua to ne bia na so omo de no mo di kan yen hyehyɛ sɛ merchant account no omo de no enka ho bi ube ye no ama opani ba kukura na fi
Medase.
be wa ha sei na magia no ye yes opani
Honorable Medase, your friend me Honorable Charles Edu Asino. Me a elected assembly member. Me sign the national president for GAM, Ghana Association of Assembly Members. Honorable
President of Ghana Association of
Assembly Members.
Pacho
E-Levy adepa. Na nya yehu ni se approach na yede yade no na emwa na me ma me ne kasa no oka se anka yemfa fi soro na mu yefa fi ase downward approach no eno betimi aboa me hu ni se yen assembly members no your electoral area ba bia Ghana ha ba bia enti with this na me papa ne ka se yema MCs no kwan a omo betimi aye adwuma no se mo resource yen assembly members na esa ni say your electoral area bia no you be free community meetings, town hall meetings like this, and the community members will be present. Send you betimi a church muye. And what we need from leadership and say, Boba my a little education on this E-Levy and any other government initiative bia or the bebano. Say Moma in that education, we the assembly members who are on the grassroots now, you betimi I empower it more than say you be in the top approach. And at the biano so your information be a bema biano, you defa NCA brofono any advertisement or radio so no aya am pempino and kwasenya ya ebetima frɛ nipa na nya no one on one na ye ne nakasa because o kase o de kofa Adom FM a nipa dodo ahina etie Adom FM obi wɔ ha that time on tie Adom FM o tie different radio nti sa advert na koso Adom FM no onti anase koso UTV a o hwɛ UTV o hwɛ ebia City TV enti mo fanfa yɛn assembly members we are the grassroots. Thank you very much.
Openi where the Mr. Mambisa who for so and now for so
me for so
any empacho me pobi on for so
me for so
or no
me for so me was some count.
Okay, so far as obi oje mic no for so nanso me pobi on the on for so kra obi on for so kra na mo fa mic ne ma no ne enti ono so na sem boko e pese ete ah de enti aban panimfo aba ne se e pese ete adwen ahodo no se me pacho fa mic ne ma obi a so ono on for so no no so nkyere na adwen na enye so omo afo so nko adwen na yetie
yo your friend me
ago pacho wo for so na wo for so
me for so and I mean some for so
me
ba I say bisa me pacho me ba pacho me for so
opening si abotre nipa be yedu edi kan kasa no obi afo so ye pa obi ono on so na yetie ono so na adwen kyere me afa mic ne man nipa we kyere no so ono Abani, what's the one for us? Ameboa. And teach the entity I won't for us. The entity I want to cast a 49 drink.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon. But you're frozen.
Benjamin Darko, I'm a student. My tree is not really that good, so I'll communicate purely in English. I have initially I wrote down 10 questions, but I'll narrow it down to just 4. My first question is, Benjamin.
Okay, take your time. Are you one of the persons who disagrees with the E-Levy?
Yes, please.
So explain to us why you disagree, what you disagree with, so that it can be responded to.
I'm explaining in the form of questions. The
Go
first
ahead.
question is, how do we categorize the E-Levy? Is it another income tax, a capital tax, a sales tax, a payment tax, or all of the above? However, one avoids this tax when they opt for cash payment. That is the first question. The second one is, corruption is a major problem that only receives lip service in Ghana. The Auditor General indicates that about 12 billion cedis remain unaccounted for over the last few years.
Ago. Ben, go ahead, we're listening. And then
over the last few years. Why E-Levy only rakes in 6.9 billion rather than recovering 12 billion. So why are we not going after the monies that have been lost due to corrupt acts?
And the last
third question is, proceeds from E-Levy are pegged towards road and transportation development, youth employment, security, and the growth of the IT infrastructure in the state. The question is, what happens to previously earmarked levies? Communication tax, sanitation levy, HESLA. How have they improved their earmarked sectors? What is the guarantee that E-Levy will be used for its intended purpose?
Thank you, Ben.
The
Ben,
2021
thank you.
population...
Ben, it's okay. Thank you. You gave us 3. I deliberately sought for you, but you gave us 3. Can we get... Hello? Gentleman in the jacket, please. You also this... Oh, Chairman, please, go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, my name is John Ewua, the CEO of Ghana Association of Banks. Since the bill was laid in Parliament and the discussions have been ongoing, as a trade body, we've been engaging with the minister and his team. I think the very final engagement was just last Monday, where we had a confirmation that a person-to-person bank transfers will not be in scope for the levy. But during the minister's presentation, I saw that the scoped-in services included person-to-person bank transfers. I just need a confirmation whether there's going to be a subsequent amendment that will factor in the agreement that the minister had with the banking industry. What was agreed was that the minister will maintain an administrative right or privilege to reintroduce or scope in person-to-person bank transfer in the event that following the implementation of E-Levy, there is a significant platform shift from the Momo platform to the banking industry. And we agree with the minister on that. So we just believe that, or we are re-emphasizing the agreement we had with the ministry that the person-to-person bank transfers should be scoped out. Thank you very much.
John Ewua, Chief Executive of Association of Bankers. Thank you very much for joining us and for the thoughts that you have shared with us. Minister, I'm going to invite you to respond to these ones, and then I'll come for the very final batch. So Mr. John Ewua and the Bankers Association want clarity on the person-to-person transfer exemption. Benjamin wanted some guarantees. He says he's opposed to it because he's not sure what guarantees we can give that the money will be used for the purpose. And then I think the other comments were requests that other groups should be factored into the education. Minister.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. John, I think you should rest assured about the discussions that we had. Benjamin, you know, the issue for me, Benjamin, is that we should really think very holistically. Benjamin, I'm addressing your question. John, I think I've answered yours. But Benjamin, I have 3 or 4 questions here. Just what type of tax it is, whether it's income, capital, or whatever. And then the last 2 years, corruption and the Auditor General's report. I'm already. And then the proceeds from other earmarked funds. And I will say, what type of guarantee do we have? I think those are all fair questions, but honestly, if you look at the enormity of the problems we have to move to another level. And I think you need to concede that the economy is changing towards virtual economy, e-commerce economy, and that tax handle should be brought into, our arsenal of taxes that are required. Guarantees that we have was what somebody suggested. that we have these quarterly reporting mechanisms, and that will be helpful. And it's helpful for all sorts of things. The way you spoke English, I imagine that you are also quite familiar with our macro fiscal numbers. When you talk about other earmark numbers, and you know that we are running a budget deficit, you know that the impact of the COVID was literally about 25 billion. How does a country support that type of contraction in its economy? You also know that compared to other West African or African countries, Ghana, even at this point, was able to eke a positive growth rate. You know what we did during the COVID time that no other African country did. We have about 300,000 people that died on the continent. Ghana was 1,379. So you need to give credit where credit is due and be able to advise yourself as to the integrity of the numbers and what that means to you when you are doing your analysis. And where there is praise, there should be. Where there is caution, there should be. So issues of quarterly reporting to encourage transparency is what matters. And it's not starting at the end of the cancer, Kwanhono Mayefe. Muka Bruchia, Namaniaji, Unim taxes I won't hear, Intia, Okohoi, Hoya Fesano. Now about Chrome dear, 1% TB, and unnecessary also dream. At the Charles and Margaret, and so can the issue of a gradual approach to the taxes. And only I say, as I say, but I mean, for a cancer, if you are never yet in Dodo, any other, and I mean, so you go around that, yet that same idea. Asemna on kano. Intina ya ne a friend saying, telcos no kokaye. Then you bay I want the no back for more. Now you relieve citizens. Now so Sika here, ya de bay Juma ya kaya no say employment any debt infrastructure no. Not still yan saka. Then you bay ya betimi aye Juma no. Margaret and Suka say something a little bit more gradual. Now Margaret, ABI is only Mr. Benjamin Darko and Sukasa. And now what you say, I am a Fadiano, and you BBS here Kohopra into no can't the technical no matter what type of tax in idea on drink near Beba ABC, the co IMF. And also now BB will also a friend. Merchant accounts. Just a merchant accounts no register of GRA. Not just no, you are exempt from it because now they have the capacity on between attract Sika once a year. And going through the merchant account, you become part of the formal economy and you also get exempted from that. Minister.
Yɛde nkɔmmɔdie no ɛreba awieɛ yɛde bisa anadwe nkyerɛ a ɛtwatoɔ ɛnan ɛna ɛbɛwie medi kan fa baako yɛde krataa brɛ mu yɛsɛ Dr. Isaac Asare ne kosa ne sɛ 1.75 no ɛbɛba abɛka deɛ telcos no ɛgye dɛda no ho anaa menim sɛ moakyerɛ mu but communications minister mɛsrɛ wo sɛ wobɛba na wɔba abɛkyerɛ mu sɛ 1.75 no ɛbɛba abɛka bɛyɛ 2% na telcos no dɛda na ɔmogye no ɛho anaa and our telcos need no be free ho. The communications minister mefro mo abiyano. Openi pacho wo kasa wie na obema yo wa kasa. Na nke ama ye nuano mo ma mienu eso akasa. Na afie de nkomodie na bawie. Yemfa mfi ase.
Yo, medindi Dr. Samuel Amponsa. I'm a management consultant and I'm a reverend minister as well. Media no ye asembisa ne sanya adwenkyere. I believe strongly say Ghanaians are discerning people. But the policy be say ba na yantimi anchromu year. Eventually the opposition party will take over the argument. na obi ka sɛ yɛbɛtumi ama parliamentarians no communicate the change to the people. But we know, sir, we have 50% share in the parliament. So eventually, when you want to communicate this message to the people, you are targeting 50%. And the communication minister, if there's any communication channels or distributive channels via what they are talking say E-Levy tomorrow, how is she going to drive this communication thing to the people of Ghana? Now, say if there are any strategies via parliamentarians even your basic schools in the crowd. When the student is empowered, that they be Ghana for rejecting any proposal we bring on board. And the man to Munuquanimua, Medidi say, the Begia tomb na bit me and Wajima.
That's it, Doc, that's it. Pacho, open your crackers.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. If I'm a Prince Kofi Ban areas, K-Wo. I'm a grassroots communicator. I am important move for. A chinyebia abba ho was E-Levy home. A mofrani and penny for a Jayanko school near the war from a Yantiasiano. No, but your smart is a maybe for penny and casa. I mean, family. Dear, at the end, say, how much less me be say? Yes, so sending mobile money, dear, you better. Me, say, Sikadu do I and only pani sendia. Mubetimiati. Na, dear Mubetimiatino. Do say, and I'm betimiati free size caniso. And no pay any here. Sir, 20% ni 7.5% no one month. To me, Mr. Sika, actual Sika.
Okay.
I'm a better fish, and I'm control.
Me pacho ya te da sipa. Na pacho ufi ina buy openi. Ufi ina buy. Pacho mate ya da se. Me pacho ye pe mai chato mienu. E mai chato mienu. Me ko bi na man kan bi de enye mai chato mienu. Yenya ma eno ne pese tie. Oba ba ku jina ha se ana pamcho mo fa kasemu no mo oba no wa ha no. Pamcho mo fa kasemu no mo oba no mesrɛ mo a mo fa mo oba no na yentie no mesrɛ mo ani dem na ye wi a oba bi ama ne nsa so nti opani ye wi a oba bi ama ne nsa so ntinam de wi o madam pacho yetie o pacho frozen why did you get that? Well, no.
Me pacho ya feme fia pokuya me ka safi afima FM okoferidia ensem no yate ase ya kyerɛkyerɛ mu atie akyerɛ yatie fo bebre na ɛna no pɛ question obi bisa me na me nso me ba be bisa mo no sɛ me send sika 1000 cedis ama honorable kwadwo opon kroma na sɛ me pɛ so oyi ne 1000 cedis a sɛ me de 10 cedis ɛto so sɛ de be ya akwadwo betimi ayi 1000 pepepe me nso a me san ni sika no ye beti me 10 cedis ebe 20 Ghana which is 2% and a telcos in 18 question e say afi bia no ana bosumi miensa bosumi nsia bia no sika ahe na 2% na telcos ne te no omode ma aban ahe ne kom na bia unso adenti na aban no enti sa tax yi enfite kosi ni ho because omo na nya sika ni bebre ebia me maami akosua foreign se bedi afia ansa ne mama ne 10 million enti sa afrene na mimi ntani sika maami e beti sa tax na fiso a o my Ghana ye nkwa ye nim wo mpuntunwa mu ana me da ase
her question is about how much revenue does the state make from the telco charges? And why are we not going that route as against this one? Madam.
Mr. Midi Florence Caesar, FIMA FM. I'm saying, before say you were called Dibrono, yet say Honorable Minister, Finance Minister, we modified E-Levy, no, and I was submitted a parliament. In just a misunderstanding, say, Adianaba, ya bogu, ya co modify, ya send ya co parliament. Until we are ye judge in Treno, they are some modifications in the parliament. And now say, ye tremat regan of us, a mupo, ya bed into Montiasia.
That's it. So what is the impact of this town hall meeting on the processes in parliament? Opening me the one baby, Yankomodian. But first,
the Premier Abraham Dam Telencon.
Abraham.
Yeah, I'm a public servant.
Okay, Abraham, you too.
Now, Mestre Namaka said, I thought there'd be a policy implementation communication, no? A how my Ghana. Uhe E-Levy a policy, and I said, BBIA, near the Abuati Memufua, or my Ghana. Then some say, Home Comodiano, and to said your nurse echo. In the Mestre, say, Yenyanum DCs, any MCs or Wahano. One more modern answers, Animal Befa. Now, why you don't broadcast? A community information system at war and Patamon Petamo woman. Now, one church and some new year, and Pama man for Sunday Baya or man for Nobetiasia. Yet, Tossum Yenua may come once and say, a ya Turcos no, dear Triano ya dear and go for the whole year. It's an so my biswa. Mobile money, Kenya. A free. What send there? A free. Oko receiving so a free. And the has said they are not denting at Tekos no. A buoyant faso. Now, yes, sir. What Jessica, a fee, they all send her. Not the Okako Yinso, what Jessica fin her. Your best rabbi say, Woms who are ye be as a one no Casa, Emanaba form. Uncle Swan on Casa Sanya Baya. They tria, away a sending it there. Once you go here, what you know, obey me, I'm an abafom, now boy, money in Ampuntu. Medase.
Mumia Monsa Mine in who I didn't try at our town hall meeting. Honorable Communications Minister Pachona Abedi can hear we are Finance Minister Bebon of our mind.
Pacho, Obi Bisa say, ye tria E-Levy no aka the telcos no eje na ani telcos no ye ne won edi enkomo enyansa wo so bebre ema omo a eje eto ewo adwuma na omo ye no omo apne so se ombete so kakra ama manfo ho aharewo sana burden no enka adeswa no na enusmu aye ha kakra ama ye nyina tie ni omo adi nkomo ama omo ankasa ato omo anum tuo se oha nchichemu aduonu enum ombe yi afi charges na omo ema no na omo soso edi aboa ban na yadeswa no ankrankre nyanke ebetua no eso ati enti eho no nkyerɛkyerɛmu a ɛwɔ hɔ no ɛno no obi nso pɛso hu nya percentage 1.75 no ntiaseɛ ti sɛ o sende 300 Ghana ubetua 3 cedis 50 pesos if you say first 100 no ɛyɛ free enti 200 na ɛda so no ɛno nso toɔ ɛna ubetua ɛyɛ 1.75 no enti 3 cedis 50 pesos ɛna bɛba abɛtɔ so ama watua sɛ wo sende 300 Ghana dakroa patro ɛno no ɛyɛ easier to understand ana telcos no ɔmo sɛ yɛbɛka yi a me na me free board dawuro sɛ yɛnye momo ho tax no akyɛ koraa ansa covid no ɛɛba da biara meka nanso meka mpanimfoɔ sɛ daabi yɛnhwɛ na yɛma saa ecosystem yi enyi ne ntompɔn kakra ne yɛhu sɛ deɛ esi kɔ na ɛbaa yɛnkyɛeɛ
enti mentumebo kakra covid yi ba yɛhwɛ sɛ deɛ yɛn nyinaa yɛbɔ twi yɛyusu yɛ na asɛ yɛn nyinaa yɛate aseɛ sɛ ɛyɛ ade a aba abɛtena ɛyɛ ade a yɛn nyinaa yɛbɛuse a yɛde bɛbɔ yɛn bra enti afei wɔanyi aduru ne mpanimfie so a yɛbɛtumi adi saa nkitaho no afa ho nti ɛno nso ka ho bi ɛna aba saa service charges na telcos no agyeɛ no afei so a ɔmo tua ho ɔmo de ka ɔmo mfa so ɔmo ayɛ no nyinaa na ɔmo atua ɛtoɔ ɛwɔ ho ɔmo tete ɔho aka na nti ɛhɔ no me na me nso mepere sɛ yɛmfa yɛma yɛni nkɔ hɔ ɔne yɛma menya asa nkyerɛkyerɛmu ne sɛ yɛde ka wɔn mfa so a ɔmo yɛ afemu no nyinaa ho no yɛka bom na yɛtwa ɛtoɔ a ɛwɔ sɛ ɔmo tua ɛfa ho no ama wɔn na ɔmo nso so atua saa toɔ no nti wohwɛ mu a na ultimately no ɔmo tua saa ɛtoɔ no ɛnyɛ nokorɛ sɛ Kenya woyusu mobile money a wontua ɛtoɔ biara ɔmo pɛ sɛ sɛdeɛ yɛn nso so yɛpɛ sɛ yɛma amanfoɔ ɛyusu sika no ɛwɔ platform ne so nyɛ sɛ wokɔ akɔyi sika no afiri afidie no mu na wode akɔdi dwa fɛdi dwa ɛwɔ platform naa so nti yɛde momo ne sɛnde wa men kɔkɔyi sika no ɛno wokɔyi sika no a ɔmbɛtew telcos ne bɛtew nti mfasoɔ a bɛnya wɔ mu no na ɛso ahwere na sɛ woyusu wɔ platform ne so deɛ a ɛka biara ɛni ho Kenya nso saa wokahye out a wotua nti ɛnyɛ nokorɛ sɛ charges biara ni hɔ ɛma mobile money users mpo company bi wɔ man mu ha ɔno nso so woyusu momo na ɔnye wo ho sika nti companies na ɛsono ɔmo nhyehyɛeɛ a ɔmo ayɛ ɛwɔ saa ayi no ɛho ɛm sɛ communication ne deɛ information minister obeyi ɛno ano ama yɛn because na dwasuo mu a no ne responsibility na ɔbɛyɛ nti I think I've answered.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's invite the minister responsible for finance. Honorable Finance Minister, your responses to the issues that have been raised. May I ask Reverend Dr. Kofi Amfo Akono to stand by for the closing prayer?
Thank you very much. Rebecca said, Honorable Esla, I responded to most of the questions by, I think of communication or information there. Kojobeye Amayen. Rebecca said, Ekua, and all can say, other than taxi, your friends saying telecom companies, Ekua, near a day name no say, companies there, you have a taxi one, and it's a continuing business. Now, I dare say a TSC, I'm a kind from the beginning say, you move 2.4 million per any tier taxes. In this any our concern, no back say, oh, Angel be na 2.4 million for non qua in tier. Now, if I can do or my immune, as I see in United Trib. As I see in United Trib, in James, we are Obia Betria, Nidia, Sanya Baya or Mai Beko Yanim. Because for quite a do, Sanya Mekaya no. Oshe unemployment the same year, a BBIM fata. Necessary in Yesikano, na yetimi train, I'm afraid, send a bear one so, one bejina had to send a agent hay, one year Juma pa 1 year, and as a one best starting with Juma, send a bear stress on public sector employment, no, a coffin. So, general unemployment, bay 13%. And unemployment between the ages of 15 to 35, almost 19.7%. About every universities near day, our between the age of 15 and 24, unemployment is 32.8%. Say indignity no, I intimi use one energy near the one, and then I say, as I see a trustle, na yako. Necessary nina yeso a juma as I say ye, na yede gana ko fa kwa, as I say ko. Into yina as I see a rally behind our red, gold, green, make the Black Star shine, tackle our needs, not depend on the West. As Margaret Kaya and also our free the market no, avoid the IMF. If so nimsenia IMF asemi eba. Enti sikaya fifi 1.75 aya kaya no. Yebetwin ho. Send definitely Parliament we dear. Ebe pass within the next few days. Send yebetimi share ejuma nase. Na yenso echo forward no ABA finance one so as I say about out more near no bon komo send ya mobehu. But sometimes you call Parliament no man no person nipe hu ansa na we do ho. Enti ebe balance na ya consult ye. But Mr. Mo, send ya baha ya no bon komo yi. Monso mon kon kantre mo namfo nom se jumapa ne pese ye de ye. You better report on a quarterly basis. Man who send you this, you used to musikano. Now on your mission, now I am build this great and mighty nation. Thank you very much indeed.
Honorable Ken Oforiatta, Yedawase, Reverend Dr. Kofi Amfuakono, Pacho Brahmin, Sabunkum so I say, Ubebon Payama in Sesia. I'm afraid the Honorable Alexander Fenyo Malkin, Emma no Eddie Abain, Enim Ada Ghana phone you now Monia Bre, Ashay, Etienne, and Enumri, Nevi Enumri, what the Munina Siamai. Now, Senior Minister Kayano and Comodiano, to say a parliament, yet the kind of to parliament, anymore, or minimum Comodian, Senior FIACNO, Assemblyman for NCC4, MP4, NDC4, JD4 driver 4 near Diana, Yin Ebeti of Wegum, na Yaya Sempatre Jumano, Mobiata. Honorable Alexander Fenyomakin, Pacho Bejina buying him na anasa Bejino Manfoni and him not Dasi, Ewa binding my mind.
So, Kojo, thank you so much. Our dear audience, first, thank you for your patience. You have participated. This is the whole essence of governance. And I must say that kudos to the opposition NDC in Parliament. The opposition has brought governance to your doorstep. I am happy that we hear better late than never. So, our friends in the NDC, thank you. That's the beauty of democracy. But I want to assure you that per the commitment from their side, I'm not sure we are going to exchange brows. And it's not good for our country. So that assurance is to you. Now, in this whole engagement, we've been able to establish and demonstrate that we mean well. Government has been able to tell you that from 2017 to date, it has kept faith. Two, through this engagement, we've been able to tell you that this levy is not being imposed merely for the sake of it. After all, we have introduced major social intervention policies that we did not have to introduce taxation to implement. So be assured that with all the concerns from the Auditor General, all the concerns that we have regarding how public funds are spent, the issues that have come up to ensure transparency, especially in the implementation of this E-Levy, will be taken on board. Yet don't want to say, if we do say, Nyamisha one, Ghana many say, Nyamisha Kofrodia, oh yeah, Yaba Kofrodia was it, Kofrodia flowers. Much of their hand me a few ampa. Nyamisha one that was a one ember, Obibiara, Abasa ember, is the Atejum as each. You when you swim there, cancer. Anka kebumemin kebi hu mentem wansa mba nche bi ayɛ mba ha amema afam no meze kofoduafo ka papa osan dɛ mekegyina parliament menyu ayɛ totɔ mo de hye a mo yi ne dɛ ɔmbra parliament ɔfam da ne ba ne nua kakra ba ne student na ɔkyerɛkyerɛ me nzɛma mu na emi nso mete nzɛma bi ase ɔyɛ ɔpanyin a ɔkɔ n'ahomegyem mark esebe yɛboa nti kofoduadze is a place of inspiration na yɛn nua bɛɛ fi so wɔ ama ne mu do a ɔreyɛ dwuma pa ɔdze aboa ɔmani nti me gye si paa dɛ sɛ yɛsan baabi o a wɔbɛgye no atom nyame nhyɛ wɔn ɛgye ofori ata se ɔda wɔn ase me maame me sister panyin me auntie madam esla ɔsɛ ɔda wɔn ase ɔman panyin akufo-addo ɔsɛ nyame nhyɛ wɔn dɛ ne papa mu ne bɔne mu yɛfɛɛfɛ wɔ anyɛ da ghanafo dɛ yɛnkɔ kan na kɛse wɔ yɛn kan nyame nhyɛ wɔn azepa kye hɛn a wɔte akokɔ no kokooko a na ɔyɛ aban ne ndase kɛsekɛse na ɔdze ma wɔn yɛda wɔn ase pii
bɔnkyɛn wɔn yɛn nyinaa yɛn sɔre na yɛn gye mpaebɔ.
mesrɛ mo ma yɛmmɔ mpa otumfoɔ nyankopɔn a woyɛ yɛn soro agya ɛnnɛ da yi woayi wo ho adi akyerɛ yɛn wode wo dom w'ahummɔbɔ ne wo nhyira awowaw yɛn ɛma town hall meeting a yɛabɛyɛ yi akɔ so fɛfɛfɛfɛfɛ yɛn a ne yɛnte nneɛma ase yɛate aseɛ mpaeɛ a yɛrebɔ ne sɛ ɔman biara nkyekyereyɛ ɔmanfoɔ ne kyekyere ɛnyɛ obi na ɛfiri baabi ɛbɛkyekyere ma yɛn enti boa yɛn ne yɛn nyinaa sɛ Ghana manfoɔ yɛmfa koma ɛnri nea ɛrekɔ so yɛ akyi na yɛn nyinaa obiara kyɛfa a ɛwɔ mu no wɔatumi ayɛ na boa ɛma mpuntu aba ɛde ama yɛn man yɛn mpanimfoɔ ɛbaayɛ wɔfiri ha kɔ yɛsrɛ wo sɛnea daa wosoa wɔn de wɔn kɔ de wɔn ba no fa wɔn kɔduru asomdwoe mu nnipa ɛbaayɛ yɛn nyinaa ma obiara ɛnya w'anim anuonyam ɔdom ne asomdwoe a ɛfiri agya nyankopɔn ɔba ne honhom kronkron ɛnka mo na awurade anim teɛ ne mo nkɔ na awurade ɛma yɛn abɛn yi adesuadehu a ɔwɔ no mmerɛ mu na yɛn nyinaa yɛn ho ntɔ yɛn yɛyɛ awurade ne agye nkwa Yesu nti amen.
ɔsɔfo yɛda ase yɛbɛto yɛn ayɛ asase nde na mpanimfoɔ no apie na yɛn nyinaa yɛdi awo biara no wɔgyina hɔ yɛto yɛn ayɛ asase ne
So you are live from Koforidua Ascension Hall, where the government town hall meeting is ongoing. Just ended. We want to see the views of some of the participants.